Apocalypse. I can steal superpowers. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101. Balance. Logically speaking, the other side didn't know how many people there were, and only 500 for a day of protection. This price was not worth it, but Kyojanian's 3 companions didn't think about fighting for their lives at all. Therefore, they could accept this price, but they just wanted GLUO to pay first, and then if the situation was not right, they would immediately take the money and retreat, and they would not lose anything. However, unlike his short-sighted companions, Kyojanian was not satisfied with this price, or he really wanted to protect GLUO. Without mentioning anything else, just talking about GLUO's temperament and attitude, even a fool could see that this person was not simple. If it was just an unrelated encounter, Kyojanian might look at GLUO a few more times, but he would never take the initiative to climb up the ladder. But now, GLUO actually came to find them, and he paid to hire him. Since there was a benefit, Kyojanian had to consider the consequences carefully. No one is a fool. You see, GLUO opened his mouth and asked for 500 per person per day, but he didn't say it firmly at all, just waiting for a bargain. What does this mean? Do you really think people are short of money? He was testing the waters. You get what you pay for. If you really agreed to 500, people wouldn't trust you. 1000 a day, at least 5 days. Kyojanian estimated the risks and benefits, and finally decided on this number. For things like bodyguards, no matter how much the other party said, you must treat it as extremely dangerous. Considering the risks and benefits, earning 5,000 yuan in 5 days is a more appropriate number. Gangs like gangsters will be ruthless when they see someone, but as long as they survive, the other party will definitely stop temporarily and look for opportunities in the future. According to Kyojanian's estimation, there is actually only danger today, but if he asks GLUO for 5,000 a day, it is pure blackmail, and he will wait for revenge. Therefore, Kyojanian compromised, not asking for much every day, but extending the time, which not only expressed enough sincerity, but also prevented himself from losing anything. 5 days, 4 people, 20,000. GLUO was not in a hurry to reject Kyojanian's price. He looked at the 3 people who had been pretending to be dumb with interest. They seemed to have been exposed by GLUO. They lowered their heads one after another and did not dare to look over. This price is not low. Can you really afford it? GLUO almost said it directly. I can pay this money, but you can't be half-hearted after taking my money and think about abandoning me and running away. Now I will give you another chance. Think about it carefully. If you take the money and don't do the job, my revenge is not something you can bear. For this price, you can pay 2,000 first, and the last 3,000 will be paid in 5 days. If we are injured, you have to pay for the medical expenses. If we are disabled, you have to pay for the resettlement fee. If we die, you have to pay for the pension. Kyojanian stared at GLUO and put forward his position when negotiating the terms. As long as GLUO paid the money, he would accept injuries, disabilities, and death in order to protect him. You do this. What about them? GLUO raised his hand and knocked on the table, moving his eyes away from Kyojanian. The other 3 people at the table were stared at by GLUO and Kyojanian at the same time, and they nodded vigorously immediately, indicating that they agreed to this condition. The money GLUO gave was not low, and this job was indeed doable. There are ways to run away, and there are ways to stay. At worst, when you see the gangsters surrounding you at night, you can call the police immediately, and then run and fight, and you can always hold on until the police come. In this world, no one is really a fool. It's just a matter of whether to think about it or not. If it really concerns life and property, no one will fool around. They also accept it. Kyojanian had guessed this result a long time ago. The reason why he didn't ask these 3 people was to show GLUO how he was as a boss. To be honest, if these 3 people didn't listen to him, how could he pull them around? GLUO started testing, since he sat at this table, but these 3 people didn't see it at all, and were still eating. For this order, how much money he made was secondary. Kyo-Junian really wanted to get in touch with GLUO, so even if it was a little dangerous, he decided to do it. After all, he was a man who fell into a well. As long as he was given a rope and allowed to climb up, he would succeed sooner or later. Okay, that's settled. GLUO flipped his phone on the table, pressed to stop the recording, and then played it again, repeating Kyo-Junian's conditions and his final affirmation. Yeah. Kyo-Junian nodded, took out his phone, to add GLUO's account, and then asked GLUO to send a recording file. At this time, compared to Kyo-Junian's indifference, the 3 people on the other side were very excited. People who were not short of money had no idea how anxious they were. The lives of the poor were worthless. For his own safety, GLUO did not blink an eye for 20,000 yuan in 5 days, but if they encountered the same situation, they could only desperately replace a few, and then wait for death. Happy cooperation. GLUO did not add the accounts of the other 3 people, but directly transferred 8,000 yuan to Kyo-Junian. Kyo-Junian raised his mobile phone, showed it to the other 3 people, and then put it away. Mr. G, what are you going to do next? You don't have to call me Mr. Just call me GLUO. You are a little older than me. GLUO was very satisfied with Kyo-Junian's attitude. After paying him, he was the employer, and it was no longer the time for him to run over to apologize to them. Let's eat first. No matter how many people come, the most important thing is to eat well. GLUO's attitude was not arrogant. He even offered a glass of wine to Kyo-Junian and the other 4. Kyo-Junian wanted to take the bottle, but was stopped by GLUO. For the next 5 days, my safety is in your hands. Of course. Kyo-Junian took the initiative to pick up the glass and saluted GLUO with a very humble attitude. The 3 people next to him also hurriedly followed suit. After clinking the glass with GLUO, they drank it all. This glass of wine seemed to say it all. GLUO put down his glass and stopped drinking. Kyo-Junian also stopped drinking and picked up his chopsticks to eat. He had just pretended to be equal in the negotiation with GLUO. Now that he had accepted his employment, he should just listen to GLUO's arrangements. Since GLUO asked him to eat well, Kyo-Junian would not endure it. He had been training his body for many years, and it was time for him to eat. The bowl of stewed meat just now was enough to fill his stomach. Now there was a table full of delicious food, so why would he be so secretive? However, no one touched the remaining half bottle of wine. He was sitting in the innermost part and had some thoughts, but Kyo-Junian glared back at him. Don't be polite. You can work better when you are full. GLUO took in everything on the table. He didn't care about the performance of the other 3 people, but he kept staring at Kyo-Junian. Chapter 102. People coming and going. Kyo-Junian is a man of talent. As early as Christmas Eve, GLUO, who had contact with Kyo-Junian, felt that he was ruthless and ambitious. Combined with the observation just now, GLUO admired him a little. If he hadn't awakened his original talent and obtained the powerful physical ability of an evolver, GLUO dared to say that he would have been suppressed to death in front of a ruthless person like Kyo-Junian. Of course, if it weren't for the pitfall ability of return date, GLUO might have been admitted to a key high school and then to a top university in the country with an annual salary of 1 million and directly reach the peak of his life. Just when GLUO and the other 5 were eating enthusiastically, the gangster on the other side sat on the chair in fear. Although he was eating, he ate without any taste, and his mind was focused on fear and eavesdropping throughout the whole process. If possible, he also wanted to run quickly and squat at the door to meet GLUO, but the leader gave him a word, and no matter how reluctant he was, he had to bite the bullet and sit down. This new leader is somewhat related to the boss. He is new here and seems to want to make a name for himself, so he is always in a rush and has very high demands on them. But he is also very generous. You won't lose money working for him. Considering the future, it is worth taking the risk to be respected by him. But this risk is a bit too big. That night, he was also one of the people who ate hot pot. The impression GLUO left on him was so great and so terrifying that he even had nightmares for half a month after that, waking up every day. As for the former leader, GLUO's knee hit him and broke his sternum. He suffered a comminuted fracture. He didn't die, but was barely saved. He is lying in bed. It is estimated that he will be like a vegetable for the next 1 or 2 years. This matter has been reported to the boss. It is rumored that the boss is furious and wants to catch the murderer directly and kill him to feed the dogs. However, it was also a coincidence that the next day after that night, a piece of land in the south of the old block triggered a conflict between them and others. The fight was very serious, and 2 good gang members even died. The incident was barely covered up. Fortunately, the base was taken, and for safety, the boss asked everyone to be at peace for the time being, put aside all conflicts, and wait for the situation. This wait lasted until a few days ago. The storm has passed, their gang has won a great victory, and the time for revenge has come. Especially the new leader. In order to show his ability, he has mentioned to them several times to find GLUO, the murderer. Yesterday, he was still investigating near the restaurant, but he didn't expect that he would meet the real owner while having breakfast today. Finally, the gangster looked at the leader's message, breathed a sigh of relief, immediately went to the counter to pay the bill, and hurried out the door. On the other side, GLUO didn't care about the gangster's departure, but Kyo-Junian deliberately put down his chopsticks and stared at the gangster's back for a long time. GLUO, they are coming. Yes, they are coming. GLUO sat on the diorite, not panicking at all. With his current level, these gangsters can use knives, guns, sticks, and clubs as long as they don't use guns. It's nothing more than a few dozen or hundreds of people. In the past month, the more GLUO practiced traditional martial arts, the more he felt the fragility of human beings. The neck, throat, arteries, and joints. GLUO is no longer willing to shoot casually, not because he is afraid of exposing his ability, but because he is afraid of death. It is not easy for him to have a clean record now. Even if he is on the blacklist, it should be in a meaningful place, not in a street fight with gangsters. I will ask someone to go back to the dormitory later to take down the weapons. Since Kyo-Junian accepted GLUO's task, he would not be careless. He was able to get along well in his early years because he was able to fight and dare to fight. If you are afraid of things, you will never get up in your life. Okay, GLUO naturally wouldn't care about these things. He just had to be a good mascot. Kyo-Junian took money to do things. If he didn't do it well, they would be in trouble. Eat quickly, Sana, go to the dormitory to get the food later. Kyo-Junian picked up 2 pieces of meat for the young man next to him and signaled him to finish eating quickly. The young man with dark skin also hesitated, ate 2 pieces of meat, wiped his mouth and stood up. No need to wait a while, I'll go now. Okay. Kyo-Junian actually meant the same thing, but he didn't say it clearly. The young man called Sana smiled at GLUO and walked out of the restaurant very briskly. Your relative? GLUO could feel that Kyo-Junian's attitude towards this young man was different from that of the other 2. He was not closer, but used it more directly. Distant relative, a relationship that can't be related to him. His parents don't care about him, and I don't care about him anymore. He won't be able to marry a woman in this life. He is lucky to be able to let you take care of him. GLUO's words and deeds praised Kyo-Junian very much. Kyo-Junian was stunned for a moment, his breathing tightened, and he wanted to ask GLUO, but he didn't say it after all. I don't know if GLUO's words touched Kyo-Junian's mind, but after that, he didn't talk much, and his chopsticks slowed down. He ate a few more bites and stopped hastily. GLUO was not hungry, and he didn't have much appetite to eat with this table of rough men. After a while, he sat there and chatted with Kyo-Junian. The 2 of them didn't actually talk about each other's affairs, but just chatted about all sorts of things, a bit to get closer to each other, and a bit to test the direction of each other's attention. The 2 guys who enjoyed the food the most at this table should be the other 2 guys. They didn't pay attention to GLUO and Kyo-Junian, and just ate there. The last table of dishes was eaten up by them. Is the food enough? Order a little more. GLUO didn't care about the money, so he naturally wanted to let them eat well. The two guys immediately waved their hands and said that they were full, so GLUO didn't insist. Since he hired Kyo Janian and 4 others as bodyguards, GLUO must ask for his opinion on the travel arrangements. Kyo Janian felt that the 4 people had not yet brought their weapons. If they were surrounded and fought, they would be at a disadvantage, so there was no time to wait. Kyo Janian was indeed very careful. Everyone knew that in broad daylight, the gangsters had to pay attention to the impact and dared not move rashly, but he was very cautious, which made GLUO look at him with admiration. While waiting for people, GLUO asked the waiter to remove the dishes on the table and ordered a pot of tea. 4 people sat at a table, 2 of them huddled at the other end, silent. Only GLUO and Kyo Janian could chat. Kyo Janian's distant relative was really agile. He came over with a woven bag before he finished drinking a pot of tea. This young man was quite careful. GLUO took a look and found that all he could see in the bag were clothes, and they were very thick. In such a cold winter, thick clothes are very useful. They can hide weapons and can be worn on clothes to provide some protection. Thoughtful. Chapter 103. Be careful. GLUO didn't expect that this young man was so thoughtful. He took out a particularly thick cotton coat, which was specially prepared for GLUO. He probably thought that if a fight really broke out, GLUO would wear it for self-defense. GLUO didn't need to wear such a thing, so he waved his hand to refuse. Kyo Janian didn't force him, but just rolled up the cotton coat and prepared it for use at any time. GLUO, we are ready. Then I'll leave it to you. GLUO said this sincerely. Since he hired the 4 of them as bodyguards, it wouldn't be too much to ask them to help block some trouble. I'll do my best. Kyo Janian didn't take on too much after all. He restrained his bottom line well and didn't say that he would fight to the last drop of blood. This little leeway was also to remind GLUO not to commit suicide, otherwise they would not accompany him. Let's go. GLUO ignored Kyo Janian's little thoughts. Since they had taken the bait, there was a way to prevent them from running away. 20,000 yuan in 5 days. GLUO is such a poor man. If he takes out such a large sum of money and throws it away, he will definitely make a big noise. Moreover, this money may not necessarily not come back. Kyo Janian and the other 3 did not know GLUO after all. They thought GLUO was really afraid of the gangsters. From the moment GLUO walked out of the hotel door, the 4 of them followed him closely. Rather than being bodyguards, they were more like the dog slaves under the ancient Oahu Tesu. On the other side, there were quite a lot of gangsters. There were more than 20 people that GLUO could sense. These people were just stalkers. When they finally surrounded him, GLUO had no idea how many people there would be. But this was also good. In Kyo Janian's imagination, although GLUO hired 4 bodyguards, he should still be very worried about his safety. The best way now was to find a hotel near the police station and stay there for a day or 2 to see how the situation changed. However, GLUO's carefree attitude was completely beyond Kyo Janian's expectations. GLUO not only tried to stop the stalking behind him, but also walked into the old street in a swagger, fearing that the other party could not keep up with him. At first, Kyo Janian thought that GLUO was playing a smoker screen, but after following for a long time, Kyo Janian found that GLUO was not playing tricks. He was really not afraid. Not only that, GLUO's subsequent series of behaviors were simply crazy in Kyo Janian's eyes. With a bunch of gangsters following him, GLUO actually ran to the old street and went door to door to ask about what the gangsters did, the amount of compensation they received after the demolition, and whether they had tried to resist or call the police. GLUO did not let go of every household on the whole street. Even if the door was closed, he tried to knock on the door to ask. If there was a phone number left, he would call directly to ask. At first, Kyo Janian thought that GLUO was just acting on a whim, but as he walked, Kyo Janian realized that what GLUO was doing now was just like those reporters who secretly visited the black workshops. If GLUO is doing these things now and is discovered by those gangsters, they will definitely be ruthless. Wait, aren't the gangsters watching behind them? They have already discovered it. GLUO, are you going to? Kyo Janian was really scared by GLUO's behavior. Offending is offending, and there is hatred. There are hatreds. These can all be resolved. But if you want to cut off someone's wealth, that is killing their parents, and you will be beaten to death. Unite all the forces that can be united to fight against evil. GLUO seemed not to understand Kyojanian's hint. He smiled and waved the newly bought notebook in his hand, as if he really believed in the existence of justice, just like a child believes in the existence of Ultraman. GLUO, we brothers are. Kyojanian was about to advise GLUO to be honest, or to warn GLUO not to seek death like this, otherwise they would not accompany him. However, before Kyojanian finished speaking, GLUO turned his head and looked at Kyojanian coldly. In an instant Kyojanian swallowed back the words he wanted to say. He was really scared by GLUO's eyes. Kyojanian had seen many hateful eyes, even the eyes of people who wanted to kill, when they were desperate, but he had never seen GLUO's eyes like this. He turned his head and looked at him, and he felt that he was going to die. People who can have such eyes are no longer terrifying because of their identities, but they should think carefully about how many people he has killed. Follow me with peace of mind. I won't give you less money. GLUO's tone was a little cold, and it was completely different from the previous kindness. Kyojanian listened to GLUO's words and nodded in silence. The other three people were so scared that their muscles were tensed. In fact, Kyojanian did feel right. In the previous flashback, GLUO went on a killing spree at Mengwu's banquet. At the party of more than 400 people, GLUO killed nearly 1/3. If the past GLUO was still scary with the momentum, the current GLUO really crawled out of a sea of corpses. He was nothing when he was casual, but when GLUO got serious, it was really scary. Kyojanian is a courageous person who practices martial arts frequently and has a strong blood. If she were a woman or someone with a weaker temper, she would have a nightmare tonight and would wake up in the middle of the night. GLUO said this just to remind Kyojanian not to cross the line. He hired them with money. He didn't pay them just now, so he could put forward conditions and ask questions. Now that the money has been collected, he must do his job well and keep his duty. Bodyguards, they have no right to control what the sponsor does. GLUO's indifferent attitude made Kyojanian and the other four completely understand their position. They no longer followed GLUO so closely, but lagged behind him by about half a meter. The occasional laughter before has now completely disappeared. Auntie, are you busy now? Excuse me. GLUO's attitude changed as quickly as his face. He was still fierce at the door, but as soon as he saw other people, he immediately put on a flattering smile. Inside the house, the middle-aged woman knitting a sweater was very careful. Obviously she had suffered at the hands of gangsters. She looked at GLUO, then at Kyojanian and the other four behind him, and felt that they were not in the same group as the gangsters who were doing the demolition, so she spoke. Don't worry, young man, what's up? Auntie, there used to be a spring cake shop at the end of the street, did you know that? I know, the girl who makes cakes is very pretty, and I was thinking of introducing her to my son, but unfortunately she didn't like it. That's my girlfriend's shop, and it was demolished on Christmas Eve. GLUO was already familiar with the ways of dealing with these people, and he didn't directly tell them what he was going to do, but first expressed his empathy, and then pushed the crisis onto others. Auntie, you guys have to be careful too. Chapter 104, Plan. It was really demolished by force. Young man, come in and tell me. The middle-aged woman was still reluctant to let GLUO into the house, but now, when she heard about the demolition, she immediately pulled GLUO into the house. For demolition, if there is a first time, there must be a second time, and once there is a second time, it can no longer be stopped. The middle-aged woman also heard about the demolition of the cake shop. She happened to be away that day, and she was a little skeptical when she heard the rumor. Unexpectedly, she met the real owner today, so of course she had to ask carefully. GLUO felt that he was a sincere person, especially when talking to Sukinghan. He believed that he should not lie to the person he liked, so his words were never so pleasant. But when facing outsiders, GLUO is the best at not telling the truth, and do middle-aged aunts like to hear the truth? They don't like it, and don't need it. So, GLUO sat on the chair next to her, and made up a mess of things, 3 parts true and 7 parts false. No matter how outrageous the cause of the incident was, the cake shop was demolished anyway. This crisis that would affect her was frightening the middle-aged woman. She didn't want to get involved in GLUO's statistics, but now that she saw the situation was not good, she had hope for GLUO. The middle-aged woman answered all the questions GLUO asked very well, and because middle-aged people were used to chatting, she knew a lot of news about people around her, and told GLUO one by one. Most importantly, she also told GLUO that 2 days ago, the hardware store in the north had offended the gangsters who came to talk. It is said that the daughter of the hardware store owner came to her father after school to ask for the key that day and happened to meet the gangsters who came to make trouble. The gangsters said a few more words and the hardware store owner got anxious and beat the man, but the gangster ran away quickly, so it didn't matter. However, before the gangster left, he shouted that he would call a bulldozer to demolish his store in 2 days so that he would not get a penny of the demolition compensation. Auntie, thank you for your help. This information is very useful. I have a relative who is a policeman. I will contact him to see if the problem can be solved. Oh, what trouble. If this can be solved, I have to thank you. Your girlfriend has a cold personality, but she is definitely a good child. So nice, of course. Auntie, I'm leaving first. Don't see me off. GLUO left with the farewell of the middle-aged woman. Kyo Junian followed him silently. In fact, he didn't understand GLUO's series of behaviors. However, Kyo Junian played the role of bodyguard very well and no longer expressed his opinions. In the face of his sensible attitude, GLUO was no longer cold. Kyo Junian, I know you are confused and suspicious. I won't lie. Things are really not as simple as you see. GLUO knew that Kyo Junian lived in the bar dormitory. He had not been to the old street much, so he naturally didn't know the real inside story of the demolition of the old street. To put it bluntly, the entire old block is like a piece of plump steak. Countless people hold knives and forks, wanting to cut off a piece from it and stuff it into their mouths. The bigger the better. For these visible interests, various interest groups are fighting to the death, and their brains are almost coming out. From 3 years ago until today, it took a full 3 years for the old block to be basically distributed. Of course, this distribution is rough and empty. Although everyone still wants to grab food from others, the most important thing is to eat your own piece of meat first. But if you want to build a house, you have to demolish it first. Building houses is the specialty of construction companies, but when it comes to demolition, GLUO didn't say everything, but Kyo Junian, who knew Mengwu, naturally understood what GLUO meant. Of course, Kyo Junian couldn't help but wonder in his heart why GLUO knew all this, and he was thinking about it. Is he also representing an interest group and wants to swallow up this old street? Kyo Junian, don't look at me like that. Although I'm a poor guy, I won't get involved in gangsters. This kind of money is earned with dirty hands, and sooner or later I will get retribution. When GLUO said these words, it seemed that he had a hidden meaning. Kyo Junian's heart moved when he heard it. He turned his head and looked at the gangsters who were following him from a distance and felt that GLUO was not simple. The spring cake shop was indeed demolished by force, but the boss lady was not my girlfriend, but my open love object. As a man, chasing a girl is nothing more than pestering her and making her feel touched from time to time. So I want to avenge her and win back this face. The gangsters in charge of the demolition of this old street, I guess you have heard of them. Their boss is called Mengwu. Outsiders call him Brother Mengwu or Master Mengwu. He is very powerful and cruel. When GLUO mentioned Mengwu's name, he deliberately glanced at Kyo Junian. What GLUO didn't expect was that Kyo Junian was unexpectedly calm. I know a little bit. Kyo Junian's heart tightened when he heard Mengwu's name, but he still remained calm on the surface. If GLUO was really a rich kid, Kyo Junian would definitely return the money to GLUO immediately and turn around and leave this place of trouble. But GLUO's look just now made Kyo Junian deeply feel that GLUO was extraordinary. As the saying goes, who dares to go to Liangshan without 3 or 2-3? The more unscrupulous GLUO behaves, the more it shows that he has a complete backup plan. It has to be said that Kyo Junian is really good at understanding human nature. But he didn't expect that GLUO's confidence did not come from any force, but from himself. GLUO, Mengwu is ruthless, and does things without leaving any room for maneuver. You have to be careful. Of course GLUO actually admired Qiao Jianyan for this. Although he was ambitious, he was very careful in doing things. Even if he was gambling, he would leave himself a glimmer of hope. Mengwu demolished my future wife's cake shop, so he is my enemy. And those hooligans behind us who slashed me with knives are also my enemies at this time. GLUO only talked about others slashing him, and never mentioned that, in order to get close to Su Qinghan, he took the initiative to provoke trouble under the influence of alcohol, and beat someone half to death. And now he is lying in the hospital like a vegetable. When enemies are together, they often become two enemies, but it is also possible that there will be no enemies. You want them to fight? That's difficult. Qiao Jianyan understood GLUO's plan a little bit. No wonder GLUO wanted to give him the issue of demolishing the old street. It turned out that the topic was waiting here. This group of black people gathered here in the old street district to make money by demolishing, but no one thought that the chassis was too big, but instead tried desperately to grab the piece of meat in other people's mouths. Now, Mengwu occupies the most lucrative and profitable place. Any hooligans will be jealous. If there is a chance, let alone fighting, there is a possibility of a gunfight. GLUO, you also said that the territory was divided up after the game above. Chapter 105, Chess Game. What Qiao Jianyan was most worried about was that GLUO would lose more than he gained. If he really only lost a handful of rice, it would be fine, but if he and the four of them were to be implicated, that would be really stupid. Yeah, you also said that it was distributed by the higher-ups. So what does it have to do with them? GLUO's plan was certainly not that simple. Mengwu, Qiao Jianyan, and the hooligans following behind would all join the game. Oh no, it should be said that they were already in the game. It's just that they didn't notice it. GLUO's walking speed was not fast, but Qiao Jianyan forced himself to slow down and lagged behind GLUO by half a step. GLUO did not comment on this, but just explained the situation to Qiao Jianyan. When Mengwu got to this point, he was actually the most panicked. It's not that he was without money, but compared to the rich, what he had was nothing, so he wanted to make more. In other words, Mengwu wanted to make a fortune and then abdicate directly. It may not be glorious, but he would definitely survive. By the way, I heard that Mengwu's children went abroad a few years ago and never came back, and his wife has been away from the country for a long time. A gangster can become the boss. How can he have a clean hand? Mengwu has such a big reputation, and he committed too many sins in his early years. Now he is forced to maintain his status. As for the possible revenge and justice, he wants to rely on the people behind him, so he must appear useful enough. GLUO's understanding of Mengwu is not just empty imagination. He spent a lot of money to check these things, so there is no doubt about the authenticity of the information. After carefully understanding Mengwu's awkward position, GLUO finally understood why he wanted to invite so many people. He was just showing off his power, not only to the backers behind him, but also to the people in the gang, who had two minds. In connection with the first meeting between GLUO and Mengwu, he went to the Rinhei bar to meet the boss behind the bar and seek cooperation in some places, and he was very enthusiastic to support Manager Qi. However, judging from the fact that Manager Qi was kicked out later, and Mengwu's grand banquet, the cooperation that Mengwu expected was obviously blown. So, Mengwu is now trapped. He wants to come down, but he is afraid of the revenge of his enemies. He wants to go up, but he can't find a way at all. The demolition of the old street, each place is a profit of hundreds of millions. If Mengwu has the opportunity and excuse to eat more meat, do you think he can give up? Do he dare to give up? The smile on GLUO's face seemed a little gloomy. Qiao Jianyan secretly glanced at GLUO and shuddered in his heart. People like G, it's better not to offend them if you can, otherwise the revenge afterwards will be very troublesome. GLUO, how do you plan to provoke a fight between them? Qiao Jianyan only knew what GLUO's whole plan was based on, but whether it would succeed or not depended on the deduction and design of the whole plan. Qiao Jianyan was quite curious about this. Hey, am I not already doing it now? GLUO tapped the notebook in his hand, obviously planning to start with the residents of the old street. That was all GLUO could tell Kyo-Janian. Kyo-Janian wanted to talk to GLUO again, but GLUO had already quickened his pace and walked into a hardware store not far away. The owner of the hardware store was a middle-aged man who looked taciturn. He seemed to be worried about the revenge of the gangsters. When he heard the footsteps, he stood up eagerly. "Hello, boss. You know the spring cake shop at the other end of the street?" GLUO was very enthusiastic towards the hardware store owner. He still did the same thing as before. He first stated his position, then asked about the situation, and finally expressed his gratitude and purpose. The whole thing was roughly the same as what the middle-aged woman said, but the details were richer. The gangsters were now shaking, as if they had a superstar behind them. "Young man, these people are really crazy. You should be careful. Don't let your girlfriend come again." The hardware store owner recalled what happened the day before yesterday, and was very angry. He even called the police, but the gangsters didn't do anything. They just talked nonsense and the police didn't care. "In fact, I don't want to be an ale household. If the demolition compensation is at the average level, I will demolish it, but The hardware store owner was also very angry. It was rare to meet GLUO who shared the same suffering, so he wanted to talk more, but who knew that at this time, his phone suddenly rang. GLUO made a gesture to invite the hardware store owner to answer the phone first. When the middle-aged man answered the phone, his face darkened, and it was obviously not a good thing. The voice on the other end of the phone was very chaotic, and GLUO did not hear it clearly, but through the middle-aged man's angry answer, GLUO basically concluded that the person on the other end of the phone was Meng Wu's men. "Asshole." The hardware store owner hung up the phone, and was so angry that he slammed the phone directly on the table. Fortunately, the phone was of good quality and nothing happened. GLUO did not interrupt, but waited until he was no longer angry before asking what happened. The middle-aged man's answer was not unexpected by GLUO. It was the gangster from the day before yesterday. He told me to clean up the store quickly and move all the things I needed. He will come today to demolish the store. Ha, so arrogant. GLUO did not expect that Meng Wu's subordinates were so fierce. They called before the forced demolition and asked people to prepare. This was to kill people and destroy their hearts. Whatever you want, if you want to call someone to resist the demolition, just call them. No matter how many people you find, it won't work. If you say it will be demolished today, it will be demolished today. It is obviously an illegal demolition, but they are making such a big fuss, and they are justified. This is obviously to kill the chicken to scare the monkey. This method is too rough. Really want to do it once, so that other residents on the whole street will be scared, and forcefully promote the subsequent demolition? Did he say what time he would come today? No. This bunch of people. I will call the police now. Calling the police is useless. Useless. GLUO waved his hand, indicating that the middle-aged man didn't waste his time. Calling the police now. GLUO can think of a way to prevaricate. The police station in the old street is estimated to have been arranged by the store owner. If the store owner calls now, the police will definitely come, but they will only ask a few questions and then turn around and leave, not doing anything. And when the gangsters come with people, call the police again, and the police will definitely delay and wait until the demolition is over before coming. Even more extreme, Meng Wu's men would directly cause some trouble somewhere else, and the entire police station would be over there, and not even half of the police force that came to help could be spared. Yeah, it's useless. The hardware store owner couldn't help but sigh when he thought of the situation the day before yesterday. Ordinary people like them lived in fear under the web of the law, but the evil in front of them stood outside the web and bullied them wantonly, and they couldn't even fight back hysterically. Chapter 106. A little calculation. I really didn't expect them to be so anxious. GLUO looked at the shop owner's worried face and sighed helplessly. However, unlike the sadness on the surface, at this time, GLUO's heart was actually laughing. The reason why GLUO agreed to Kyo-Janian to hire the four of them for 5 days was actually because he was afraid that Meng Wu would be hesitant and lead to the embarrassment of not being able to get the actors together when the good show started. But who knew that Mengwu would be so cooperative, or he was so anxious that he started to do whatever it took. In any case, all this, as if it was destined by God. It was so interesting that people wanted to laugh. "Boss, what's your surname?" Gluo waited for a while, and when the time was almost right, he began to mention his real purpose. The hardware store owner was stunned for a moment, and then realized what Gluo meant. No need to be surnamed ZHU Zhang. The hardware store owner was almost twice as old as Gluo, and it was impossible for him to be unaware of the ways of the world. Gluo asked him his name at this time, which obviously meant to have a deep conversation. "Uncle ZHU Zhang. They are bringing people here today. What are you going to do?" "What else can I do? I can't do anything." ZHU Zhang had a painful expression on his face, and his expression and words was that he was helpless and desperate. However, Gluo was not a fool. How could he not see ZHU Zhang's pretense? Yes, it was true that the gangsters were going to demolish the house by force, and it was also true that ZHU Zhang had no way to do anything. But now Gluo asked his name just to talk about business. At this time, what is business? Isn't it just to help? But the hardware store owner was also smart. He felt that Gluo's words meant that he could help him, and also meant to help him. However, him asking Gluo for help and Gluo offering to help him are two completely different concepts. He asked Gluo for help, which meant he had to pay a reward. How big would this reward be? To stop dozens of gangsters and bulldozers from demolishing the house by force. Therefore, ZHU Zhang wanted to pretend to be pitiful and let Gluo offer to help him. In this way, even if Gluo was kind and helped him to avoid such a big disaster, he would kneel down and kowtow to Gluo. This was a favor, not a business. Gluo had never intended to ask for money. How much money could a hardware store owner have? As an evolver, he came to ask for money from him, which was not enough to lose points. However, not intending to ask for money and the other party not wanting to give money at all were two different problems. I can refuse it, but you can't refuse to give it. This is not a matter of repaying a favor, but an attitude problem, a problem of attitude as a human being. For such a big thing, you don't think about gratitude. The first thing you think about is how not to pay money, and how to calculate favors. Such people have narrow vision and narrow mind, and they will never be able to take a wide road. As an evolver, Gluo would unconsciously stand in a relatively high position. It doesn't matter if he is arrogant or a celestial dragon. Anyway, Gluo can be more tolerant and tolerant of ordinary people. However, Gluo becomes even more difficult to approach people with bad tempers. Just like now, the originally harmonious atmosphere was destroyed by ZHU Zhang's words. ZHU Zhang was still waiting silently, shaking his head in pain, showing an expression that the sky was about to fall. He had no way, and someone was kind enough to help. Gluo glanced at ZHU Zhang and had no interest in talking to him. He wanted to direct this play, and there were plenty of opportunities and actors. How many shops on this street would be demolished by Mengwu and his men? Gluo just found someone to help, and they would be grateful. Who would bother with such calculating people? Boss ZHU, since you can't do anything, then find someone quickly and see who will help you. Gluo didn't waste words. He just stood up and walked out. He was not pretending. He really felt that this kind of person was too troublesome. He didn't have the time to bother with him. A little bit of kindness, a big bit of grudge. He didn't want to help others to cause hatred. It was not enough trouble for him. Hey, little brother, don't go. I beg you, help me. When ZHU Zhang heard Gluo's change of address to him, he immediately knew that his thoughts were seen through. Seeing Gluo turning around and about to walk out the door, he was so anxious that he wanted to slap himself in the face. He walked over and grabbed Gluo's arm and knelt down with a plop. Little brother, I really have no other choice. If you have a way, please help me. You name a number, I will never bargain. ZHU Zhang was really unable to hold it back now. He was scared, really scared. His hardware store, with 2 storefronts and 4 rooms, really had to be compensated at market prices. Not only could he get 2 shops, but at least 1 or 2 million in cash. But if it was demolished by the gangsters today, let alone 2 storefronts, he could only get 1, and the compensation would not be 1 or 2 million, but 1 or 2,000. This gap was really too big. ZHU Zhang just thought that GLUO wanted to protect him from this disaster and then cut a heavy knife from him, so he didn't hold his words. But now, GLUO really wanted to leave, and ZHU Zhang had to stop him. There was no way. He was an ordinary person, and he might know a few relatives and friends, but how many people were there? Even if there were more people, what was the use? He was facing 30 or 50 vicious hooligans, who specialized in fighting, and made money from it. They were very cruel. That day, when the Chunshan cake shop was demolished, ZHU Zhang also went to see it. There were 20 or 30 people, carrying steel pipes and long knives, looking ferocious as if they were going to kill people. How big is the cake shop? Can it be compared with his? It is estimated that 40 or 50 people may come today. How can he stop them? He can ask acquaintances to come. If someone gets beaten up, he will have to pay a lot of medical expenses. If someone is disabled or even dead, his joint liability means that half of the shop is gone. Little brother, I know I said the wrong thing just now and made you unhappy. Please help me and find a way to survive. ZHU Zhang is nearly 50 years old. At this time, he really gave up his face. He has no savings in his life, and he put all of it into this hardware store. This is not a shop, but his life. With the market price demolition, he can probably get 5 million. This much money, let alone a lifetime, he can't get it in 2 lifetimes. For the future of his children, let alone his old face, even his life is fine. Alas. There must be something hateful about pitiful people. GLUO had 1 foot out of the door, and he was held by ZHU Zhang's arm, so he had to stop. With ZHU Zhang's little strength, if GLUO really wanted to break free, he would hit the wall with a flick of his hand. However, seeing someone twice his age kneeling on the ground, begging him desperately, who can really remain indifferent? Alas. Everyone has their own destiny. For ordinary people, life is full of hardships, especially for parents like them, who really try their best to think about their children. Okay, stop kneeling, get up first. Chapter 107, Sorrow. GLUO is not a cold-blooded person after all. At ZHU Zhang's pleading, he walked back into the store and sat down on the chair. At the moment, how dangerous the situation is, ZHU Zhang, the owner of the hardware store, does not understand, but GLUO sees it clearly. The demolition of the entire old street is equivalent to the transformation of half of the city. What a huge benefit this is. How many people want to take advantage of this to rise to the top in one step? In order to compete for the territory, they have paid a lot of resources and connections, and they are no longer willing to wait. So, they add fuel to the flames, and try to find an opportunity, a person to break the situation. Even if this person is discarded after use and directly shattered after bearing the pressure from above. Mengwu is this person. He has entered the game and he has no choice but to play his role well and complete the task. One step back and you will be shattered to pieces. One step forward, you will be clothed and fed with delicious food. No matter what others think, at least Mengwu thinks so. So he completely tore his face and decided to use the most absolute force to smash the first wedge. To be honest, at least GLUO didn't believe that a gangster boss had the ability to make the entire branch become deaf and blind. ZHU Zhang, I tell you the truth, this matter is not simple. No one is simple. Don't think too much, don't ask too much, keep your position. I dare not say the future, but today, even if Mengwu comes in person, your store cannot be demolished. GLUO didn't want to persuade ZHU Zhang now, and he didn't have time to make up a story for him, so GLUO said it very directly, that is, let ZHU Zhang keep his duty, keep 2 eyes, don't keep his mouth. Do you understand? I understand, I understand. ZHU Zhang only saw the situation clearly at this time. Mengwu, a big gangster, actually has many enemies. This GLUO looks gentle, but he may be more ruthless than Mengwu. There must be someone behind GLUO, and it may even be a profit group. He is now planning to go against Mengwu. The reason why he came to him is nothing more than turning his place into a battlefield. Brother GLUO, as long as my house is not demolished, you tell me the number. I will never say anything back. Don't set a trap for me. I will protect you once today. GLUO didn't have a good impression of ZHU Ziyang, and his tone was merciless at this time. ZHU Ziyang actually fell for it. The worse GLUO's attitude was, the better his attitude was. GLUO looked at his flattering face and felt annoyed and angry. ZHU Ziyang, my purpose is not money, so let's not talk about money. You go find a restaurant later and order a few tables of good dishes. If there are 10 people at a table, you can order 6 or 7 tables and tell them that you don't go to the restaurant to eat. Today, we will have a banquet at your doorstep. Okay. Let's order a richer one. 8 tables, and the number is also auspicious. ZHU Ziyang listened to GLUO's request, nodded, and couldn't help but smile. GLUO's attitude is indeed to solve the problem. Invite 60 or 70 people to come for dinner. If Mengwu dares to come, it will be a thunderbolt and a firestorm. No need. 7 tables will do. No one's money comes from the wind. GLUO rolled his eyes at ZHU Ziyang. He was really angry with him. Now he knows how to behave. Just now, you were a little smart and couldn't say that. Okay, I'll go get it now. ZHU Ziyang now has hope and is full of strength. He really has no way to deal with a big bastard like Mengwu. Now GLUO is helping him and directly pulling over 50 or 60 people. What kind of situation can't he deal with? Tell me your phone number. I'll call you if there's anything. GLUO took out his mobile phone and dialed the number reported by ZHU Ziyang. ZHU Ziyang answered the call, hung up after it was connected, and then saved GLUO's number. Brother GLUO, I've got it in mind. I will definitely report to you if there is any situation. ZHU Ziyang smiled embarrassedly. Looking at GLUO's series of performances, he felt that he had judged a gentleman by his own mean heart. Because of what he said just now, GLUO actually looked down on him, so he asked for his phone number and asked for his contact number. However, although GLUO said so heartlessly, he silently called him and gave him his phone number. He already has other people's phone numbers. If something happens, can he not call him for help? From this incident, it can be seen that this young man named GLUO is really a good person. ZHU Ziyang, let me tell you, I'm very busy. Don't come to me for trivial matters. GLUO put his mobile phone in his pocket and walked out with big strides, as if he felt that the store was unlucky. ZHU Ziyang hurriedly sent GLUO out. When he reached the door, he wanted to send him back, but GLUO waved his hand and pushed him back. Don't be so pretentious. If the food is not delicious later, don't lie. I will tear down your store. Okay. Don't worry, brother GLUO, I will definitely satisfy you brothers. ZHU Ziyang could see that GLUO had a sharp tongue, but a soft heart, just like what his daughter said. Tired of rubbing? Brother GLUO, I have no experience in my life, and my vision is too narrow. I can only see the bugs in the grass. I was really wrong just now. Please forgive me. ZHU Ziyang's eyes were filled with tears. A man in his 50s, if he really had no other choice, how could he ask for help from a young man who was 2 wheels younger than him, and he even knelt down just now? I understand. I don't need to be too demanding of you. GLUO has let go of this matter now. ZHU Ziyang is more than twice his age. The generation gap between them is like a chasm. Since they only worked together once, why should he bother so much? Thank you. Thank you. ZHU Ziyang took a step back and did not see GLUO off. He could see that GLUO really didn't want to have more contact with him. His help was only for this time. In the future, he would have to rely on himself. As the saying goes, if you do your best, if you make demands, you will become an enemy. ZHU Ziyang has lived for most of his life, and he knows the ways of the world. He knows that, no matter what he says, he can't change GLUO's impression. On the contrary, it will give him the feeling of being arrogant and respectful. It's better to say goodbye. You're welcome. It's just for myself. GLUO turned his head to look at ZHU Ziyang, nodded slightly, and turned to walk back the way he came. ZHU Ziyang kept watching GLUO disappear from his sight. He let go of his hand holding the door frame and took 2 steps into the house. He stumbled and almost fell. He hadn't moved for too long and his feet were numb. ZHU Zhang moved forward 2 steps and sat down on the chair. He took out his mobile phone and looked at GLUO's phone number. He couldn't help but smile. God won't let me go. I met a noble man. ZHU Zhang looked at the simple string of numbers until he was completely blamed. Then he looked away. At this time, he had tears in his grey hair. This period of time was really hard for him, especially in the past 2 days. He was really desperate and almost crazy. Fortunately, there is a righteous way in the world. Chapter 108. Think more. GLUO. This kind of person, if he is not hurt, he will not change. Kyo Junian followed GLUO until they were 2 blocks away. Then he ended his silence and talked about what happened just now. In Kyo Junian's opinion, GLUO was capable of solving the forced demolition in today's situation, so it would not be excessive to ask for 30 or 50,000, let alone a meal. The demolition compensation of 4 or 5 million. People want to help you with such a big thing, and with your attitude, it would be a kindness not to double the price and ask for 100,000 yuan. He will change if he is hurt. GLUO turned his head and glanced at Kyo Junian. The expression on his face was a little indignant, full of resentment towards ZHU Zhang, and there was no emotion towards GLUO's actions at all. He's over 50 years old, his temper is set and can't be changed. And I don't know how many people have similar personality to him. They are submissive to bad guys, but hit good guys hard. Because he is a good guy, he is not afraid and has an unscrupulous attitude. Because he is a bad guy, he is afraid of revenge and can only bow down. There seemed to be another meaning hidden in GLUO's words. Kyo Junian lowered his head slightly, but no matter how he tried to guess, he couldn't figure out the hidden meaning in GLUO's words. GLUO, what are we going to do now? Don't keep asking. No need, we know almost everything. The information is enough. GLUO certainly noticed that Kyo Junian was deliberately changing the subject, but he didn't care about the changes in Kyo Junian's thoughts. Since he still wanted to take a roundabout way, let him do it. I didn't notice it before. I walked half of the street and spent the whole morning. I have filled half of my new notebook. GLUO casually flipped through the notebook full of words. Then he closed the spine and handed the notebook to Kyo Junian. Kyo Junian didn't know what GLUO meant, but he had to follow his employer's instructions. Kyo Junian took the notebook, opened it and read 2 pages. He had heard about the things written on it before, and they were all things he already knew. You take it and put it away. GLUO clapped his hands, indicating that he was free with his hands empty. Kyo Junian nodded and put the notebook into the woven bag. To be honest, at this time, Kyo Junian really couldn't understand GLUO. He followed GLUO around for a whole morning. He visited every store with people on the old street one by one and asked and chatted with each one in detail. The things in this notebook were all the information GLUO had specially written down. The situation of each store was clearly written. Even the house number, owner's name, and phone number were all recorded. If you want to say it is very important, it is not necessarily true. After all, it is just an answer obtained through verbal chat. How much water is in it, how much is true and false, has not been carefully confirmed, and it cannot be taken seriously. However, if you want to say it is not important, after all, GLUO wrote it stroke by stroke in the morning, and it makes people feel dizzy and painful just by looking at it. Moreover, this is also considered as evidence of Meng Wu's crime. If it really goes to court, it may be used as testimony. It is just such a notebook that is not clear whether it is important or not. GLUO handed it to him casually. Although GLUO's words were very brief, as the saying goes, the fewer words, the bigger the matter. Kyo Junian is now thinking carefully. He always feels that there is some deep meaning behind what GLUO did, and even has the meaning of reminding him. After all, if GLUO really finds it troublesome and asks him to hold the notebook, why didn't he say it at the beginning, but waited until he finished reading the first 2 or 3 pages before speaking inexplicably? Kyo Junian, who was very good at thinking and imagining, thought for a long time, but could not figure out GLUO's motives and purposes. Instead, he did not stop and followed GLUO all the way to the end of the old street. Wait a minute, I'll make a call. I forgot something. GLUO stretched out his hand to signal Kyojanian to wait, and he walked a few steps to the side, took out his mobile phone, and made a call. GLUO's call was very brief, and the person on the other end came very quickly. In just a few minutes, a young man in his early 20s came over with a stick. The reason why it is specifically called a stick is that the stick in the young man's hand is a very standard traditional martial arts tool, a white wax stick as thick as an egg, bright and white throughout, about 2 meters, and 1 meter long, and not light in weight. The reason why Kyojanian knows this kind of stick is because he has seen people use it before. It is also a white wax stick, the thickness of an egg, but shorter. At that time, the two villages were arguing and wanted to fight. He picked up the stick and hit them head on. The strong guys in the two villages arrived before they even reacted. Then 7 or 8 people from the opposite side surrounded him. His movements were neither hurried nor fast, but his strength was extremely fierce. Although it was a stick, it would directly fracture someone's arm if it hit him. For other parts, the injury would be lighter, but it would be excruciatingly painful, and the muscles would swell up purple and blue. If it hit the legs, he couldn't even stand up. Later, Kyojanian asked the man specifically, and only then did he know, that his family's martial arts was a spear, and it was not an ordinary spear, but an iron spear, that could only be used by a general with extraordinary physical strength. This kind of spear is heavy and heavy, but it is extremely powerful when wielded. If it touches someone, it will either be disabled or dead. The reason why he used a stick is actually because he is afraid of killing someone. Brother G, what do you want the stick for? Is there something wrong? Zuyi can be described as loyal to GLUO. He has been worried about GLUO all this time, fearing that he would be irrational in order to retaliate against Mengwu and get himself involved again. Now that GLUO asked him to deliver the stick, Zuyi's heart sank directly. If there were no one next to him, he would have asked in detail, if I really want to do something illegal, why would I use a stick? Can it kill people? GLUO raised his hand and hit Zuyi's shoulder. Zuyi has been thinking a lot recently. Although some things did happen, he is actually fine. It's nothing, I can get through it with a smile. That's right, Brother G, if you really have something to do, you must tell me, don't hide it from me. Zuyi's words were a bit obscure, but GLUO could understand. Zuyi meant that, if GLUO wanted to take revenge on Mengwu, he would call him, and he would help. The two of them would put on sacks, and beat people together, and they would also have someone to take care of them. Okay, don't worry about me, I'm fine. Go and kiss your girlfriend GLUO, I'm not, I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. Although Zuyi is a bit naive, he is very shy in terms of feelings. He has held hands with others, but he is embarrassed to admit it to the public. Okay, go ahead, practice martial arts well, and you will have everything you want. Okay, I'm going back. Zuyi's trust in GLUO has reached a blind point. Anyway, he believes whatever GLUO says, and does not doubt it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, Illusion. Because GLUO did not introduce Zuyi, Zuyi did not say hello to Kyojanian, but turned around and left. Although Zuyi was not good at talking in a roundabout way, he understood that Brother G was not an ordinary person. He would definitely speak up when he needed him. If he did not speak up, it meant that the matter was not appropriate and he should not get involved. You have grown up. GLUO looked at Zuyi's back as he left and suddenly felt a little happy in his heart because his encounter with him had really changed Zuyi's fate. In just 1 or 2 months, the ignorant boy had a girlfriend who was willing to accompany him. But there were also some things that had never changed. Zuyi was really a good kid. Just be happy. GLUO danced a spinning flower with his stick and then walked back to Kyojanian with the stick. Kyojanian kept his position well and did not ask anything this time. GLUO, I just observed that the number of thugs monitoring us seems to have increased. They are just a bunch of rats hiding their heads and showing their tails. Ignore them. Let's go, I'll treat you to hot pot. GLUO seemed not to hear Kyojanian's worries, and he still looked carefree. Just now, GLUO let Kyojanian and the others take the notebook, but at this time, GLUO was holding the stick himself and had no intention of handing it over to Kyojanian. Let me tell you, you think you haven't eaten at that hot pot restaurant. I ate it once some time ago, and I will never forget the taste in my life. Okay. Kyojanian didn't know what GLUO was thinking. Anyway, he couldn't see through GLUO's mind. Anyway, he had already warned GLUO of the danger. If GLUO didn't care, then if something happened, he would have to bear the consequences himself. Let's go. GLUO didn't mean to take a taxi. He walked in front. Kyojanian walked beside him, slightly behind him, and the remaining 3 people kept a distance of 1 or 2 meters. GLUO didn't remember the hot pot restaurant that Su Kinghan invited them to, but he knew it was roughly on that street, so he didn't use his phone to check, and just took Kyojanian and the other 3 to walk casually. Because of the previous crossing of the line, Kyojanian has been very conscientious in his duties. If GLUO didn't bring up the topic, he wouldn't say a word. When GLUO asked, he answered truthfully. For some points that might cause unpleasantness, Kyojanian would also perfunctorily pass them over in a subtle way. Of course, GLUO didn't care much about Kyojanian's attitude. Although he was the one who brought up the topic along the way, every conversation was a test and inquiry. At the beginning of the conversation, Kyojanian didn't care too much and just wanted to perfunctorily answer GLUO, but as the conversation deepened, Kyojanian's answers became slower and slower. He even thought about a question for 4 or 5 minutes before answering. This seemed to be exactly what GLUO was trying to do. He and Kyojanian didn't talk much, and basically all of it revolved around Mengwu and the old neighborhood. But what made Kyojanian uncomfortable was that GLUO would often say a premise and then ask him what he would do if it was him. If there was enough time to think, Kyojanian believed that he could answer perfectly, but GLUO's questions were very fast, and after he answered each question, he didn't comment on whether it was right or wrong, but directly switched to the next question. Kyojanian even had the illusion that he was, like, being interviewed. After noticing GLUO's thoughts, Kyojanian immediately perked up. Although he didn't know GLUO's background yet, he would be a fool if he couldn't see GLUO's extraordinariness. Kyojanian, who had been waiting for the nobleman, couldn't help but get excited at this moment and answered the questions with all his heart, but this also slowed down his reply time. However, GLUO didn't care about these. He asked so many questions to test Kyojanian and give him an illusion and hope he would be reused, and the opportunity he had been waiting for finally came. Kyojanian, if you were Mengwu, after you gambled everything on your family fortune, the result was failure. The people behind you are going to abandon you. What would you do? Failure after gambled everything on your family fortune. Kyojanian followed GLUO. Because of the long period of concentrated thinking, he sweated a little in the winter. Kyojanian thought for a moment, wiped his face vigorously, and spoke in a sonorous tone. I will turn myself into a bomb. If I die, the people behind me will also be blown into disability. Only in this way will he be cautious and protect me. Good idea. With the character of Mengwu, he will definitely not be willing to be abandoned and scapegoat, and it is really possible to do so. Although GLUO was the one who brought up the topic, he didn't seem to care so much. Instead, he looked left and right, looking for the hot pot restaurant he had been to. But if Mengwu really does this, then he really won't be far from death. Why? Because he is old and not ruthless enough. If he doesn't make a bomb that can kill enough people in advance, will it be too late? GLUO glanced at a big sign with his peripheral vision and immediately turned his head with a happy expression on his face. Found it. This is it. Look forward to it. Eat more later, sure. Kyojanian nodded very obediently, but his mind was still on GLUO's previous words. It was deafening. Mengwu is old and has enjoyed it for too long. His current position is no longer what he can do now. The more you fear death, the more you will die. If Mengwu was 20 years younger, no matter who was behind him, they would never dare to treat him like a dog so blatantly. If there is an enemy, let him out, and after biting someone, kill him and calm the anger. After all, Mengwu at that time had no family and children. As long as he was not killed, the person who plotted against him would definitely die. But now, Mengwu can no longer do it. Qiao Jianyan always felt that there was something behind Zhou words. The more he thought about it, the more he could feel Zhou's deep thoughts, so he became more wary. Qiao Jianyan also admitted that he liked to figure out people's thoughts and often thought too much. Friends said that he was thoughtful and made a fuss about everything. However, after contacting Zhou, Qiao Jianyan only felt that he still thought too little, because this Zhou, every word and action was full of deep meaning. Even, Qiao Jianyan had an illusion that this Zhou seemed to be very familiar with him. Many sentences seemed to be prepared for him, directly hitting his heart. Qiao Jianyan, who could control the situation in every aspect, felt powerless for the first time. He felt that Zhou was simply cheating. He thought of these words temporarily, but Zhou's sentences were simply as if he had been thinking about it for more than half a month and specially prepared for him. Is it my illusion? Chapter 110. Getting started. Beauty, I'm looking for your manager. I have some special requests to tell him. Zhou stood in front of the cashier counter and tapped the table twice. The cashier looked up and stared at Zhou in a daze. Then, the girl nodded desperately, as if to express her understanding. She didn't even care about the money she was ordering. She turned around and ran to the second floor of the hot pot restaurant. Because she ran too hastily, the girl bumped into a chair with a bang. The chair rubbed against the ground and made a sharp sound. Then the chair fell to the ground and the girl fell down, like she was slapping the ground. The girl didn't know how painful it was to fall. Anyway, everyone watching from the side felt that this fall was too miserable. But the next moment, the girl got up from the ground with tears in her eyes. She didn't even cry out in pain and continued to rush upstairs without looking back. Really, dedicated. Zhou put down his outstretched hand. In fact, he just wanted to remind the girl not to be anxious and walk slowly. Who knew she was so reckless? This cashier seems to know you. Qiao Jianyan stood beside Zhou and was not fooled by Zhou's antics. Instead, he felt something was wrong. He couldn't tell why. It was just his intuition. Qiao Jianyan always felt that Zhou seemed to know him, and it was not just an ordinary acquaintance. He had worked together and was familiar with him. However, Qiao Jianyan was sure that he didn't know Zhou and had never met him. Today's encounter in the braised pork shop was the first time. After all, Zhou's temperament was too special. Qiao Jianyan dared to say that anyone who had met Zhou would never forget him. However, things were so weird. Qiao Jianyan's sensibility could not convince his rationality, so he became impatient. Zhou, on the other hand, still had a leisurely expression. In order to avenge Su Qinghan and solve the previous drawbacks, he thought about it for more than half a month and wrote 2 notebooks for the plan. Qiao Jianyan, are you kidding? Can he run away? The plan had been prepared for him a long time ago. Arrangements, all arranged, from entry to burial. Haha, it seems that I'm still quite handsome, so she still remembers me so clearly. Zhou shook his head narcissistically. Naturally, Qiao Jianyan did not believe Zhou's words, but thought that he was hiding something from her. Really? It's unlikely. Well, I really don't think so. The last time I came here to eat, I had some unpleasantness. She must have remembered it. In fact, they were all trivial matters, but they disrupted her business, so they were recorded in her notebook. Zhou seemed to know that he could not perfunctorily deal with Qiao Jianyan, so he admitted it frankly. Qiao Jianyan nodded and did not ask any more questions. He also knew that Zhou did not tell the truth completely. However, it was enough to know that Zhou had a conflict with someone here. Deng deng deng. A series of hurried footsteps sounded, and the manager of the hot pot restaurant ran down from upstairs. When he saw Zhou for the first time, he immediately recognized him, and then a smile appeared on his face, as enthusiastic as meeting a relative. Dear guest, is there anything you need? We will definitely do our best to satisfy you. Hahaha, thank you so much. To be honest, I'm craving the taste of your hot pot, so I came here specially to eat GLUO, like a regular customer. Naturally talked to the male manager, and the male manager's attitude was terrifyingly good, just like meeting his boss. Still want a super spicy soup base, right? No problem, I'll prepare it for you right away. It just so happens that the best private room is still there. No, it doesn't need to be so spicy. One third of that spiciness will do, and in addition. GLUO leaned forward and whispered something to the manager. The manager's face changed, and then he immediately nodded, indicating that he would definitely meet GLUO's requirements. Please wait a moment, sir, I'll prepare it now. Okay, thank you for your trouble. GLUO was like a bully who collected protection fees. Not only did he not ask for extra money, he didn't even mean to give money. It was too much. Kyo Junian did his job well. The 4 bodyguards standing next to GLUO looked like robbers in a bank lobby, ready to rob a bank. Anyway, no matter how Kyo Junian and his friends felt, the waiters in the hot pot restaurant were very scared. By the way, the cashier who went upstairs to find the manager never came down, since he went upstairs. He was probably crying and healing his wounds, which was miserable. I don't know if GLUO's face was big enough. Anyway, in less than 10 minutes, the customers in front of GLUO were still waiting. GLUO was personally informed by the manager that everything was ready. Good, let's go. GLUO supported his knees and stood up from the chair. Then he followed the waiter who led the way and walked out of the hot pot restaurant without hesitation. Kyo Junian originally thought that the manager was going to arrange GLUO to a special private room and serve him well. However, when Kyo Junian accompanied GLUO to an empty parking lot, he looked at the tables and chairs arranged in the corner, and his mind even froze for a moment. What does it mean? Several situations. GLUO, is that manager listening to your arrangements or messing with you? Normally, when a distinguished guest comes to the restaurant, the best private room must be used. But now, why would they move the table to the parking lot? Moreover, this doesn't seem to be the parking lot of the hot pot restaurant. It's so clean. Did the car just move away? It's so fast. GLUO, this is. Kyo Junian wanted to ask too many questions, and he didn't know where to start complaining. GLUO, on the contrary, was very calm, as if he had arranged it this way. It's not good. It's so open here. GLUO sat down on the main seat with a stick, made of white wax in his hand. The waiter who led the way came over and helped open the lid of the pot. His smile looked very forced. Guest, the pot is already boiling. Do you want to start serving the dishes? No, you can go. You don't have to serve. It's not like you don't have hands. Hey, Dileo's set is awkward and troublesome. GLUO waved his hand to signal the waiter that he could leave. The waiter's smile immediately came to life. He bowed his head and saluted, then turned around and hurried back. The mouse is a third party for the cat, making money without caring about his life. GLUO shook his head, as if sighing at the decline of morals. Then he pulled back the extra stool beside him, and put the stick in his hand on it. Because the table was very large and the 5 people were sitting very far apart, the stick that GLUO put in this position, Kyo Junian and the other 4 people could not reach it. Come on. Taste it. Today's hot pot will definitely make you unforgettable for the rest of your lives. Come on, eat quickly, otherwise you won't be able to eat it. GLUO had an excited smile on his face, as if this hot pot could really make his blood boil, but these words always sounded strange to Kyo Junian. It's a pity that at this time, Kyo Junian still couldn't understand what GLUO meant. Chapter 111, All in the Pot. Although Kyo Junian was not satisfied with GLUO's words, they could not refuse the employer's invitation to a big meal. Without further ado, the 4 of them sat on the chairs in tacit understanding. The aroma of the steaming hot pot wafted in the air. Kyo Junian took a deep breath, and actually felt a little bit drunk. Oh my god, is this still a hot pot for people to eat? How many peppers are added? Hiss, so cool. So cool. GLUO picked up the mutton that had been boiled in the pot and turned red, and ate it so happily. GLUO looked at the somewhat restrained look of Kyo-Janian and the other three, and very enthusiastically put the whole plate of mutton on, motioning everyone to eat together. Kyo-Janian was not a person who could not eat peppers, but the red base in front of him was too scary, but GLUO ate it so deliciously that he was a little greedy. Kyo-Janian tentatively picked up a piece of meat and felt that his whole mouth was burning. Spicy. It was really too spicy. It was as spicy as if the brain was burning. Don't be polite. Eat, eat, eat. I have something to do later, so I won't drink. The juice is next to the chair. You can drink it. GLUO is not the kind of person who would worry about things. Anyway, he ordered a lot of things that can go into the hot pot. Not to mention 5 people. Even 10 people are enough. The key is whether Kyo-Janian and the others will eat it. After tasting the first piece of mutton, Kyo-Janian was so spicy that tears came out, and he was forced to drink a lot of juice. But after the spiciness faded, the fragrance made him miss it again. After struggling for a while, Kyo-Janian still couldn't help it, and once again, he stretched out his chopsticks towards the hot pot. And then, it was out of control. I have to admit that eating hot pot outside in the middle of winter is still very exciting. The spicy taste that penetrates into the bone marrow makes people sweat quickly all over. The temperature is only about 10 degrees, but it feels very comfortable next to the fragrant hot pot. GLUO started eating alone, but after Kyo-Janian and the other 4 started eating, the 5 of them rushed to eat, making the meal more enjoyable, and even very enjoyable. Unfortunately, this hot atmosphere did not last until the end of the meal, because an uninvited guest came. The parking lot that the male manager arranged for GLUO was not the parking lot of the hot pot restaurant, so the location seemed very remote. Normally, if GLUO and the others were arranged to eat here, the parking lot would have been closed and no one would disturb them. However, more than 50 scoundrels with machetes surrounded the entire parking lot when GLUO and the others did not notice, like a shrinking circle, leaving GLUO and the other 5 with nowhere to escape. What's going on? Kyo-Janian was among the 4 people and was the first to discover the people being surrounded. He immediately pulled over the woven bag containing weapons and pulled out a long and narrow myo knife from it. After Kyo-Janian responded, the other 3 people also quickly prepared themselves. They took out their own long knives with some fear on their faces. Yes, 5 people, facing more than 50 people on the opposite side, who wouldn't be afraid. No, GLUO was not afraid. He was obviously surrounded by people, but GLUO was still very calm. He even had time to carefully rinse 2 pieces of tripe and eat them happily. GLUO. Kyo-Janian was also panicking at this time. He had considered that this mission would be very dangerous, but he didn't expect the situation to be so deadly. It wasn't even night yet, and the opposite side pulled out more than 50 people to surround and kill them. What hatred, what resentment. There are only 5 of them. Do they need to make such a big scene? How these people really think highly of me. GLUO ate 2 more pieces of mutton, exhaled 2 mouthfuls of hot air with satisfaction, and then used chopsticks to pick up the lettuce and rinse it into the pot, constantly stirring the red spicy soup. There are too many people on the opposite side. Kyo-Janian looked at GLUO's still calm appearance and was furious. This employer is really unyielding. He knew that he was being followed by gangsters, but he left the downtown area without knowing the consequences and chose such a remote place to eat hot pot. What's more infuriating is that he didn't eat hot pot in the restaurant. Even if he was surrounded in the private room, he could still block the enemy for a while and then jump out of the window to escape. Maybe there would be a glimmer of hope. But this idiot GLUO actually ran to such an empty parking lot to eat. Isn't this a place for the enemy to surround people? Besides, no one comes to this place, and no one will know if he is beaten to death. Wait. Why? It has become like this. GLUO, what on earth do you want to do? Kyo-Janian finally reacted. GLUO couldn't be unaware of these basic principles, but he still did it. There was no other possibility except to seek death. Only, he had made preparations in advance, so he was so calm and didn't panic at all. We 4 are your hired bodyguards anyway. It's time to tell you your plan. When will the reinforcement come? Reinforcement? Where will the reinforcement come from? Do they have reinforcement? GLUO seemed to not understand what Kyo meant and was still playing dumb. Kyo was completely angered by GLUO's attitude. He took out his mobile phone and transferred all the advance payment he had given him to GLUO without hesitation. GLUO, as your bodyguard, you didn't reveal the most basic information to us and deliberately took risks to make us face this situation. Now, our contract is terminated. The money I received from you before has been returned to you. Now, we don't owe each other anything, and there is no relationship. Kyo spoke quickly. Even in such a crisis, he still had a clear mind and directly got rid of GLUO, the pitfall. Although there were more than 50 people on the opposite side, there were still weak points after all. If they surrounded them 360 degrees, the four of them rushed forward and should be able to fight their way out. This group of people are not here to surround them. GLUO is a real target. As long as they don't bring him along and let GLUO attract enough attention, there will be a way out. Oh Kyo, you are really impatient. GLUO took out his mobile phone and put the money transferred by Kyo into his wallet. See, GLUO said before that the money for hiring Kyo and others as bodyguards does not have to be returned. Now, isn't it all back? I admit that what I did was a little ill-considered and put you in danger, but you guys abandoned me so decisively. It was cruel enough. More than 50 ruthless people with machetes. I'm afraid they are going to chop me into mincemeat. GLUO didn't mean to resent Kyo. After all, he was still unkind in this matter, so GLUO was very generous and evened everything out. So, we are the same. Let's take a step back, put these things behind us, and offset the problems between each other. Chapter 112, Talk. Okay, write it off. Kyo eyes never left GLUO's face. The reason why he drew a line with GLUO so quickly was that he did sense the danger of death. Second, he wanted to test GLUO in this way of burning both sides. That's right, although Kyo looked furious, his series of words and actions were all tests of GLUO. Although he said that he would sever the employment relationship with GLUO, they were still on GLUO's side, and they didn't run away. The money was returned to GLUO, and it could still be taken back. The previous contract was abandoned, so why not just sign another one? It's not like they really broke up or became enemies. They were all business, and they could sit down and talk. However, Kyo obviously didn't expect GLUO to be so calm, or so indifferent to them. Obviously, the circle of 50 people was getting smaller and smaller. These people deliberately walked very slowly, just to put pressure on GLUO and the other 5. But even so, in 2 or 3 minutes, they would be surrounded by 3 layers inside and outside. Brother Kyo, what should we do? Kyo-junion's 3 fellow villagers naturally went forward and retreat with him. Although they also loved money, in this situation, Kyo-junion's decision to return the money to GLUO was indeed a good choice. Since the money was returned, the 4 of them didn't have to fight to the death with GLUO. Whether it was a fight or a negotiation, there was room for them. But whether this only room could allow them to leave here intact still depended on Kyo-junion's ability. Don't be impulsive, talk first. Kyo-junion turned his head and glanced at GLUO, feeling very uneasy. He really didn't believe that GLUO would not prepare any backup plans and would eat hot pot stupidly when he was about to die. If the current scene was really caused by GLUO intentionally, then GLUO must have a way to save himself, and he might even have made a backup plan to break the situation, but he was just waiting for the opportunity. To be honest, although Kyo-junion had only been in contact with GLUO for one morning, in his heart, he was far more afraid of GLUO than anyone he had ever met. Even Kyo-junion was reluctant to admit that he was a little afraid of GLUO. This GLUO was really too powerful. His words and deeds that suppressed him everywhere could even be described as mysterious. Therefore, Kyo-junion didn't want to really break up with GLUO until the last moment. But the problem now is that, even if he just used his biggest bargaining chip to test GLUO, the result was still meaningless. Why? On what basis? At this time, you still don't care. If you really don't need it, why did you hire the 4 of us as bodyguards? You clearly saw that my words just now were all testing, but why didn't you even pretend to be bumbling? Don't they even have this value? What a step back, what a write-off. It's all about not caring about them. Because they are fearless, so lightly. GLUO, I think we should talk frankly. Talk to me? I thought you were going to talk to them. GLUO picked up the cup and took a sip of the juice. He hissed because of the spiciness. He raised his head and looked at Kyojanian's serious expression, knowing that the heat was almost right. Kyojanian, do you know what I admire most about you? Kyojanian did not respond to GLUO's words, but kept staring into GLUO's eyes. GLUO also looked at him without avoiding, without any sense of crisis of being surrounded. Kyojanian, you are very good at grasping the degree of many things. GLUO knocked the edge of the bowl with chopsticks, shaking the red oil on the chopsticks into the bowl, and then put the chopsticks on the bowl. You have a good eye, but not that great. You have a strong desire for adventure, but you are actually more inclined to gamble. You are used to speculating about others, but you always stay on the surface, and cannot trace the source. Yeah. Kyojanian listened to GLUO's evaluation of him and nodded gently, agreeing with GLUO's evaluation. GLUO was also very satisfied with Kyojanian's attitude. He rested his elbows on the table, interlaced his fingers and palms together, and supported his chin. Kyojanian, in all kinds of things and aspects, you can be said to be self-aware, good at returning to the right path, or even good at collapsing and selling out. At least, you are a smart person who knows to stand on the side of the winner, instead of only looking at the immediate interests and crises. GLUO pointed at the gangsters who surrounded him, narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked extremely dangerous. At this moment, among the four of them, Kyojanian was actually the only one who still had hope for GLUO, and was still on his side. The remaining three people were now thinking about how to sell GLUO, and get away safely. Of course, it's not that their idea is bad. After all, the relationship between them is that of an employer and a bodyguard. Now that the money has been returned, there is really no relationship between them, and they have no regrets in selling GLUO. But the problem is that they are stupid, so stupid that they can't even see that all this was arranged by GLUO. In fact, they also feel that GLUO is very powerful, but they don't understand how powerful GLUO is and to what extent. They just think that it is too dangerous to be surrounded by more than 50 people now, and as long as they get out, everything will be fine. But they don't think about it. Is GLUO an ordinary person? As long as he survives this time, the revenge afterwards will really be lighter than the current desperate revenge. Among so many people present, it is estimated that only Kyojanian understands how terrible GLUO is and how deep his mind is. So, even at this time, he still took the initiative to talk to GLUO instead of talking to these gangsters who were besieging him. GLUO, what on earth do you want to do by doing all this? If Kyojanian still had some doubts and concerns before, then now, Kyojanian is certain that everything in front of him was planned by GLUO. He put everyone's ideas into it, just for a certain purpose. Kyojanian really regrets now. Why did he feel the danger of GLUO, and agreed to his previous employment? 1,000 a day, 4 people for 5 days and 20,000. They have already made preparations, and the money will definitely return to his hands. Therefore, the other party did not care about their offer at all, and even treated them to 2 sumptuous meals, just for them to join the game. I just want to make a deal with you. GLUO made a little gesture with his fingers, as if to say that Kyojanian only needs to pay a little price to get everything he wants. Now, I guarantee your safety. As the price of the deal, you help me do something. Chapter 113, Provocation. Just like the dagger revealed at the end of the picture, it was not until the 5 of them were completely surrounded by more than 50 gangsters that GLUO revealed his purpose and fangs, not to make them his bodyguards, nor to ask them for protection fees, but to let them do one thing that is greater than the above benefits. Kyojanian thought of many possibilities, but he didn't think that GLUO was doing this. He clenched the long knife in his hand tightly, and even for a moment, he wanted to draw the knife and kill GLUO. After all, it doesn't feel good to be calculated by others. Being controlled by others and calculated to a situation where there is no way out makes people want to go crazy. However, this idea only appeared for a moment. Intuition told Kyo-Janian that at this time, GLUO was still sitting on the Diote, and he definitely had his own backup plan. No matter what happened, no matter how bad the situation was, a backup plan that could solve everything. Do I have any other choice? Of course GLUO did not hesitate at all, and decisively confirmed Kyo-Janian's question, as if he was just a shopper who paid money. Whether or not to reach a deal in the end was up to Kyo-Janian to decide. What do you want me to do? Kyo-Janian's eyes never left GLUO's. At this moment, he seemed to reject this choice, but Kyo-Janian was inclined to agree to GLUO. Because GLUO's answer just now was of course, not of course you can, nor of course you can. But since he gave such an ambiguous answer, it was already forced. Until tomorrow morning, follow me and be my little brother. GLUO spread out his palms, fully expressing his honesty. But how could Kyo-Janian be satisfied with this answer? He frowned, but he was a little skeptical that GLUO would only make such a simple request when he was about to kill them. What do you want me to do for you? Let you follow me to deal with the problem of the demolition of the old street. GLUO propped up his hands on the table and stood up from the chair. Then he grasped the white wax stick at his side and spun it casually. Don't worry, I guarantee your safety, and I won't let you have a criminal record. Okay. Kyo-Janian knew very well that he didn't have any choice, so it was not a difficult decision to agree to GLUO's request. Moreover, in his heart, Kyo-Janian was actually quite curious why GLUO had to go through such a big circle just to let them follow him, just for one day. What is his value? Do they have this value? 4 children from the countryside, with no education, no ability, can only do some work with no room for advancement. Is it really necessary to calculate like this? The contract is established. GLUO took the stick and walked forward a few steps, stretched out his right hand to Kyo-Janian. Kyo-Janian raised his head, hesitated for a moment, but also stretched out his right hand and shook hands with GLUO. Okay, next, you go back and sit down, leave it all to me. GLUO seemed to have accomplished his goal and finally didn't need to pretend. He waved his hand calmly, his tone full of unquestionable meaning. Kyo-Janian was not a fool, so he would naturally not do anything to volunteer. So he and the other 3 companions sat back in their chairs very obediently, but they did not put down their weapons. So at this moment, in the empty parking lot, GLUO stood alone, facing the crowd that surrounded him, and tapped the wooden stick in his hand heavily on the ground. You are really slow. You have made me wait for half a month. Here you wait. Waiting to die. On the gangster's side, the encirclement has been completely completed. Walking in the front is a young man with small eyes. He has a very fierce tone, and is obviously the leader of this group of people. Little friend, we were tied up by things before, so we let you jump around for a few days. I didn't expect you would be so stupid. Really? I think it's okay. GLUO shook his head nonchalantly. Although he was looking forward, the focus of his pupils was very vague, as if he was immersed in a certain picture. You disturbed my life and made me unable to eat hot pot in peace. Now there are more than 50 people surrounding here. Do you really think you have me in your arms? So what? The leader of the gang was certainly not a fool. He looked at GLUO's expression of ignoring them. He was angry at first, and then secretly became cautious. Any normal person would understand what the end would be if they were surrounded by 50 gangsters with machetes, fighting hysterically, kneeling on the ground begging for mercy, or bringing up someone to make them afraid. This is the behavior of normal people. But now, this boy who looks only 18 or 19 years old, just holds a long wooden stick, standing in front of them arrogantly, not worried about his situation at all. This is obviously abnormal. My name is GLUO. What's your name? GLUO suddenly changed the subject. His previous indifference was completely gone, and instead he had some intention of negotiating. And the gangster, since he had already taken control of the situation, was not afraid of GLUO causing any trouble, and it didn't matter if he said a few more words. Yan Yunayang. It's a good name, Yan Yunayang. How about we make a bet? GLUO stretched out his hand, pointed in front of him, and drew a circle representing everyone, as if everything was under his control. I will beat all of you. If I lose, you can kill me, or chop me up as you please. But if I win, you have to help me fight. Of course, it's not free. I can treat you to a big meal. If you have any doubts, that's fine. The outcome of the victory or defeat can be decided by you. I will listen to you on such matters. Although GLUO was laughing when he spoke, the contempt that came from the bottom of his heart was hardly concealed. Yan Yunmayang listened to GLUO's conditions and smiled at first, but after really listening to it, his face became gloomy. GLUO's attitude was undisguised from beginning to end. These words sound like a conditional exchange, but in fact it is a declaration. I'm not targeting you. I'm saying that everyone here is garbage. I can beat more than 50 of you by myself and beat you all into submission until you admit that you have lost. Then, I can spare your lives, but as a price, you have to help me fight a fight. Yan Yunmayang looked at GLUO's expression, that everything was negotiable, and the anger in his heart could no longer be suppressed. Who gave him the courage? Fish Liang or Ultraman? He opened his mouth with an expression that he was sure that they would fail, as if saving their lives was his mercy. Chapter 114, Retreat. Good. Very good. Yan Yunmayang laughed in anger. Not only did he not deny GLUO's bet, but he agreed decisively. I'll make this bet. If you can really defeat us, then let alone fight for you, I'll even sell my life to you. No, no, no. It doesn't have to be that serious. Why do I need your life? Just a fight will do. GLUO didn't seem to hear Yan Yunmayang's sarcasm. His indifferent attitude completely angered everyone. More than 50 gangsters, holding machetes, looked more and more fierce. In this murderous atmosphere, GLUO walked forward a dozen steps calmly, approaching the gangsters, and at the same time keeping a certain distance from the hot pot table. Comrades, you have to cheer up, don't let me down too much. But be careful not to get hurt too badly. After this fight, let's go to the banquet, and then help me fight, of course. Yan Yunmayang waved his hand, and the most capable people in the club gathered around him. The gangsters who were originally scattered in a large circle also began to gather, looking like they were going to fight the boss. So be careful. At that moment, GLUO let out a long breath, held the stick in his hands with both hands, and actually made a spear starting posture. Idiot. Yan Yunmayang felt that GLUO was out of his mind. A young man in his teens and 20s, who practiced some martial arts and thought he was invincible, didn't even know the truth, that 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. Don't hold back, just hack him to death. Yan Yunmayang's voice was full of ferocity and murderous intent, and the hooligans around him were also elites who had seen blood. With bloodthirsty smiles, they rushed towards GLUO frantically. There were more than 50 of them, all carrying knives, fighting a young man with only a stick. How could they lose? This idea, almost all the hooligans had a common idea, or it could be said that normal people came to a conclusion after judgment. However, when they rushed to a distance of 3 meters in front of GLUO, their attempts, experiences, and conclusions were all completely overturned. Or, they were defeated. Under that unparalleled figure. Retreat. At that moment, GLUO held the stick with both hands, pulled his right hand back, and then pushed it suddenly. The stick of the white wax rod, like a dragon emerging from the water, stabbed out with an unavoidable flat shot. Bang! The stick didn't have a gun head, so it shouldn't hurt anyone. But GLUO's strength was too terrifying. It was just a flat stick, but it had the effect of a hammer. The man who was hit in the chest didn't even scream. His chest bones made a crackling sound, and were visibly concave. Then, the huge inertia made the gangster fall backwards. The man behind him couldn't dodge in time, and was smashed to the ground, which stopped the momentum of the whole charge. Retreat. GLUO shouted, as if to remind them. He swung the long stick in his hand left and right. After the process of accumulating and releasing power, the flexible white wax rod was like a flexible long whip, hitting the thighs of the 2 people on the left and right. People who have not been attacked by GLUO can't imagine that even with a long stick, GLUO can be so fierce. Even if he was hit on the thigh with the thickest muscles, the 2 people who rushed forward still fell to the ground, as if their legs were broken. They dropped the long knives in their hands, hugged their thighs, and screamed in pain. It was not that they could not bear it, but it was really too painful. The beating of the stick was so strong that half of the thigh was numb from the pain, and they even had an illusion that they could not feel their legs. Such an attack was easy for GLUO to handle. Facing the people surrounding him, he not only did not retreat, but took 2 steps forward. Then, GLUO held the bottom of the stick, and swung the whole white wax stick like a long whip. An inch longer, an inch stronger, an inch shorter, an inch more dangerous. The 2-meter long stick, in GLUO's hand, was like a surging white wave, slapping the gangsters rushing forward. So, a group of people fell down. GLUO knew that he was very strong, but now, he was not relying on strength, but on his familiar control ability. After half a month of training, GLUO has completely mastered the transformation of becoming a bronze-level evolver. What he sees and feels is not at all rich and accurate as ordinary people can imagine. Therefore, GLUO can dodge any malicious attack, especially the 3-meter distance around him, which is a barrier that others can never cross. Bang, bang, bang. GLUO's figure does not look fast, and even gives people an illusion of being very slow, but every attack of GLUO is too swift and fierce. Anyone who is hit will fall down immediately without even struggling to get up. It's not that the arms and legs are broken, nor is it a bone, it's just pain, pure pain, so painful that it's unbearable. GLUO, who was obviously surrounded and should have escaped, was actually the main attacker. He used many techniques, sometimes gun techniques, sometimes stick techniques, and even occasionally, when he passed by, he would show his boxing and leg techniques. But there is no doubt that GLUO's attack was calm and steady. Every time he swung the stick, 1 or 2 people would fall down. He walked steadily and was always moving, as flexible as a loach. Retreat. This was the 3rd time GLUO shouted this word. The gangsters didn't care when he heard this word the first 2 times, but now they couldn't help but pause. Because they understood that when GLUO said this word, it meant that he was going to hit hard. It was like an agreement, and it was also like a means of conditioned reflex to tame a beast. GLUO raised the stick in his hand forward and actually hit a man's heart, lifting him into the air. The scene at this moment really looked like an acrobat performing, but in fact, no one wanted to cooperate with GLUO, and even wanted to kill him with a knife. But in this chaotic and dangerous scene, GLUO easily lifted people up to 3 or 4 meters high. The flying person really has an inexplicable attraction. Everyone's eyes can't help but gather over there. In this short moment, GLUO swung his long stick left and right, opened a path in front of him, and then, straight forward. Yan Yunayang. I'm coming. GLUO was like a cheetah accumulating strength. It only took a moment for him to go from static to dynamic. He grabbed the right hand of the person next to him and squeezed it hard, causing the knife in his hand to fall. Then, this person was thrown forward by GLUO like a meteor hammer, and Yan Yunayang was hit directly in the chest before he could react. Chapter 115. No resistance. Chaos, screams, and roars in the cold wind. The empty parking lot has completely become a battlefield. Driven by anger and passion, the gangsters rushed towards GLUO one after another, not only besieging and attacking him. However, the figure dancing alone in the battlefield was like a small boat in the waves. Although it was swaying, there was no sign of sinking. At this moment, Kyojanian and the other 4 were sitting by the steaming hot pot, looking at the chaotic battlefield in front of them, holding their weapons tightly with both hands, and couldn't say a word. Kyojanian had thought of GLUO's backhand when he found out that he was surrounded, but he never thought that what really made GLUO ignore the threat was his own strength. It was simply outrageous. Is this still a human? Kyojanian looked at GLUO's figure, who was struggling left and right, and felt his head buzzing. Everything he had planned before was overturned. Among the more than 50 gangsters, there were about 20 to 30 who really rushed forward. Each of them carried a machete and didn't want to hold back when fighting. GLUO only had a stick made of white wax, but he was able to handle the situation with ease, even though there were people on all sides. Sweeping horizontally, chopping vertically, and collapsing diagonally, GLUO's every strike was sure to hit, and the person hit would definitely fall down. From the perspective of a bystander, Kyo-Junian saw that GLUO was alone, playing with all his enemies. Many times, he could kill someone with one strike, but he chose to hold back, which only made people feel unbearable pain, but there would be no real casualties. So, the clown is me. Kyo-Junian was originally very scared that GLUO would drag the four of them to resist the demolition army under Mengwu. But from what GLUO said just now, GLUO had a plan to let these people come to surround him, and then he would beat these people to become sharp weapons against Mengwu. What a terrifying mind, what a terrifying thinking. Now it seems that GLUO had a plan long ago, as early as when he saw the gangster in the braised pork shop. Everything started. If it was an ordinary conspiracy, Kyo-Junian could still see through it, but facing GLUO's plan that was linked together, Kyo-Junian didn't even have the idea of resisting. Think about it, this morning when GLUO was eating braised pork, he saw a gangster who recognized him. After a few minutes, he thought of a plan, found the right person, and began to promote and implement it. At that time, GLUO must have known that these gangsters would retaliate against him. During the day in the downtown area, he would only be followed, but when no one was around, these people would want his life. So, GLUO found the four of them, took advantage of their greed, and tied them to the boat. At that time, GLUO did not tell a single lie, he just hid some facts and only showed them one side of the matter, and the rest was left to his own imagination. Kyo-Junian, who felt that he was a smart man, felt that he had understood the situation, so he agreed. GLUO is simply playing with people's thinking and judgment. As a sudden intruder, GLUO maintained goodwill and aggressiveness, and told them about the mission, which was dangerous, but not too dangerous, and profitable but not so high as to be suspicious. This kind of just right giving and deception made Kyo-Junian completely become a fool. Or rather, Kyo-Junian was originally a smart man, but compared with GLUO, he was a fool. How such a good fighter still needs the four of us as bodyguards? Kyo-Junian thought about GLUO's previous pretense and felt cold all over. What kind of scheming and calculation is this? Thinking carefully, the four of them actually had no choice at all. If GLUO, a man who had planned everything, set his sights on them, there was no escape. Everything was within GLUO's expectations. Even now, although GLUO was fighting with more than 50 gangsters, he wanted to defeat them and let these people fight for him. But this display of muscles was telling Kyo-Junian that he had no plan at all, whether it was intelligence or force, and he had no other choice except to surrender. It's acceptable to be a younger brother of such a man. Kyo-Junian still felt unwilling in his heart, but he had to admit that GLUO's scheming was really unfathomable, and he couldn't beat him. What's more, he had such a strong force. More than 50 thugs who were the best at hacking people surrounded him, but were beaten to near collapse by him. And now, GLUO rushed directly towards Yan Yunayang, the boss. Asshole. Yan Yunayang was not frightened by the force displayed by GLUO. He held a machete tightly in his right hand, and was ready to fight GLUO to the death. However, Yan Yunayang didn't expect that GLUO would be so despicable that he actually threw a brother of his over. In order to prevent accidental injuries, Yan Yunayang could only move the blade away, but he underestimated GLUO's swiftness after all. When the figure thrown over approached, Yan Yunayang had no time to make other actions, and was directly hit. Ugh. Yan Yunayang felt like he was knocked away by a bull. He fell to the ground and rolled around. When he regained consciousness, GLUO was already standing in front of him, looking relaxed. Asshole. You. Yan Yunayang was about to struggle to get up, but at that moment, GLUO's long stick suddenly stabbed down, with such force that it even made a sound of wind. Yan Yunayang only saw a black shadow rushing straight to his cheek. Reflexively, Yan Yunayang lay back and closed his eyes tightly. After a few seconds, Yan Yunayang did not feel any pain. He slowly opened his eyes and found that the stick that GLUO had stabbed out was just 1 centimeter away from his eyes. At that moment, GLUO only needed to use a little more force, and the stick would pierce his eyes and directly into his brain, killing him here. Do you want to continue fighting? Let's stop here. GLUO looked at Yan Yunayang's appearance after surviving the disaster, and the smile on his face looked very gentle. However, in Yan Yunayang's opinion, GLUO's expression was like the devil's grin, and the despair and threat in it pointed directly to death. Okay, let's stop here. Yan Yunayang didn't want to surrender just like that, but GLUO's weapon was just 1 centimeter away from his eyes. Yan Yunayang doubted whether GLUO would be ruthless and complete the previous killing action if he continued to resist. Yan Yunayang didn't want to die, and he didn't want to die so meaninglessly. I won the bet. GLUO raised his right hand and took back the stick. Then he stretched out his left hand to Yan Yunayang on the ground, looking full of kindness. Yes, you won. Yan Yunayang on the ground nodded, stretched out his right hand, and stood up again under GLUO's pull. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Talent. When Yan Yunayang admitted defeat, there was silence in the field. No one objected, and no one agreed. Almost everyone was confused and at a loss. They didn't even understand how a person could fight so well. Just an ordinary stick hit them like being shot. The pain made their muscles twitch, and they had no ability to resist. In the dusty parking lot, more than 20 people fell to the ground, rubbing their injured parts. After the initial pain, they were much better now, but their eyes were still avoiding GLUO's figure. Because it was really terrible. As for the people standing, there were of course people who were not convinced by GLUO's beating, but that was just meaningless self-esteem at work, and they would not really say it out loud. After all, after fighting to this extent, no one was unaware that they had lost. Even if it happened again, GLUO would still beat them up, and even beat them harder, because he was angry. Don't worry, everyone. My technique is very good. It just hurts a little, but no bones are injured. It will be fine in a while. There was no embarrassment on GLUO's face, as if the fight just now was just a child's play. That's good. Yan Yunayang didn't know what to say. He showed an ugly smile on his face, and forced a follow-up sentence. After that, I'll leave it to you. GLUO patted Yan Yunayang's shoulder, picked up the wooden stick with messy knife marks, and walked back to the hot pot table in a very free and easy manner. Kyo Junian, I'm going to pay the bill now. Please help take care of these friends. You know the place for the banquet. GLUO's attitude towards Kyo Junian was very natural, as if the two were old friends who had known each other for many years. Facing GLUO's familiar attitude, Kyo Junian nodded a little stiffly, which was considered to be an affirmation of GLUO's answer. If it were possible, Kyo Junian really wanted to curse now. How much is this broken hot pot? Please, let me pay. Let me leave here immediately. Go to the hot pot restaurant to pay. You use such a bad excuse to leave, leaving me here, facing more than 50 thugs with knives. What should I do? Kyo Junian really wanted to cry in his heart. You beat them up like this, and asked them to work for you. You know in your heart that these people hate, resist, and fear you. But is this a reason for you to throw everything to me? If I handle it well, you won't reward me, but if I don't handle it well, you don't need to deal with me. These thugs will hack me to death. And it's minced meat on the spot. You bastard. Are you taking revenge? Revenge for wanting to abandon you and leave just now? GLUO, go and pay the bill. I'll take care of it. Kyo Junian had too many things to complain about in his heart, but GLUO's power was too terrifying. Kyo Junian could say without hesitation that he was really afraid of GLUO now. He is not as smart as him, not as strong as him, and now he has agreed to be his follower for a day. He has all the reasons and can summon the dragon at any time. Then I'll leave it to you. GLUO was very satisfied with Kyo Junian's attitude. He nodded in a leadership style and nodded to the other 3 people encouragingly. Then, GLUO turned and left the parking lot. All the gangsters along the way avoided him at the same time, revealing a wide road. Under the gaze of nearly 60 pairs of eyes, GLUO left the parking lot very casually and handed the mess to Kyo Junian. Brother Kyo, what should we do? Feeling the gazes of the gangsters around them, Kyo Junian's 3 fellow villagers were a little scared. Kyo-Janian must be scared too, but what can he do at this time? If he can choose, Kyo-Janian is willing to reveal all the information about GLUO and completely draw a line with GLUO. After all, more than 50 gangsters with machetes are really scary. His life is no longer in his own hands. It all depends on the attitude of others. But Kyo-Janian couldn't do that, because no one is a fool. Yan Yunayang couldn't believe that Kyo-Janian had only known GLUO for a few hours and was deceived into becoming a helper. After all, GLUO went into the battle alone and had to protect them. It's okay, it's not a big deal. Kyo-Janian was panicking, but he gritted his teeth and acted very naturally. GLUO had already shown his power, and now he wanted to use his remaining power to subdue these people. Force them to complete the bet with GLUO. Just as Kyo-Janian walked in front of Yan Yunayang, in a hot pot restaurant not far away, GLUO had just paid for a bottle of carbonated drink. He was drowsy on a bench on the street under the sun. Not far away, more than a dozen vans were lined up in a straight line. Several drivers were left to watch the cars. They talked and laughed with each other in a relaxed manner, not knowing that there was a devil staring at them. GLUO certainly hoped that Kyo-Janian could complete his task and make the 50 or so gangsters obedient. But if Kyo-Janian fails in his mission, GLUO will not let them go. Today, this group of people must help him to fight Mengwu. If it's not a dog-eat-dog fight, how can everything be reasonable? The smile on GLUO's face was very evil. Half a month of data collection and plan making became a perfect reality in today's accidental encounter. Su Qinghan has something important to do, and GLUO can't hold her back, but if he does nothing, Mengwu is likely to take advantage of her, and the revenge of the other gangsters will follow. So, a kind person will be bullied, and a kind horse will be ridden. Only if you are cruel enough can you stand firm. Kyo-Janian, you are quite cruel. GLUO shook the drink bottle in his hand, drank the rest in one breath, and then threw the bottle into the trash can. In the distance, walking side by side, the atmosphere between them was pretty good, and the topics they talked about seemed to be in sync. Behind the two, more than 50 gangsters supported each other, walking a little slowly, but they all followed well. What a talent! GLUO felt a little secretly happy. His vision has always been good, and Kyo-Janian did not disappoint him. He actually did a good job, although it was a bit pretentious. But looking back at the whole thing, GLUO could defeat everyone. But when driving these people, GLUO must not be the one to appear. Relax and give each other some face, so that everything can go smoothly. At this time, Kyo-Janian and Yan Yunayang, who were approaching, also saw GLUO's figure. The expression on Yan Yunayang's face froze for a moment, and then he lowered his head silently. Kyo-Janian seemed more active. He said something to Yan Yunayang, and then ran quickly to GLUO, with a serious face, as if he was making a report. GLUO, it has been discussed. I want to take them to the hardware store on the old street now. Chapter 117. Su Qinghan's call. Go ahead. I'll leave everything to you. GLUO was very satisfied with Kyo-Janian's ability. After getting his approval, this Avenger who wanted to climb up the ladder got into Yan Yunayang's car very excitedly. Really, amazing. GLUO was not a person who would belittle himself, but at this moment, GLUO had to admit that Kyo-Janian did much better than he thought. If it were him, it would probably be a different story, especially in terms of knowing the limits. Kyo-Janian was really amazing. Just now, Kyo-Janian directly said that he wanted to go with Yan Yunayang without inviting GLUO, which meant that he understood the current balance and GLUO should not enter. In addition, it also showed that Kyo-Janian had the confidence to complete the task, and it could be said that he was proving himself to GLUO. After all, if Kyo-Janian followed this group of people, if they regretted it halfway, Kyo-Janian would be miserable. To be honest, GLUO was very confused about how Kyo-Janian made these people obey him. Although they had been beaten, it was not easy for these hooligans who were good at telling lies to redeem their bets. Am I using the right people? GLUO smiled and stood up from the ground. He waved his hand, called a taxi, and got in. GLUO didn't really care about everything that had happened since the morning. He would be very happy if he succeeded, but he wouldn't lose anything if he failed. Whether it was just going with the flow or just doing something out of boredom, in GLUO's heart, he didn't care too much about the harassment from these hooligans. The focus of everything was still Sukinghan. Will you see a lot of evolvers at the auction of holy relics? GLUO had already entered the world of evolvers. The first people he met were Sukinghan and Shushan, who had died in his hands. The innate ability of each evolver is unique. This kind of power that can be regarded as superpowers in the eyes of ordinary people is called the original talent in crossing Yan's mouth. Because of the special nature of return date, GLUO used to think that he was an evolver killer, but now, he has lost his initial arrogance and has become more vigilant. When facing any evolver, he must never take it lightly. When I think of you, I woo empty hate, to dream about you for a long time. Woo burn the ashes and bury the smoke and willow. When GLUO was thinking about it, his mobile phone suddenly rang. GLUO looked at the caller ID and couldn't help but be shocked. Hello. What's wrong with Sukinghan? Nothing. On the other end of the phone, Sukinghan didn't expect that GLUO's voice would be so anxious. The girl reacted instantly and understood that GLUO was nervous because he was worried about her. I've been staying at home the whole time. What could have happened? Did you have lunch? I cooked a little too much. Do you want to come back for dinner? I've already eaten. GLUO smacked his lips uncomfortably. He really wanted to go back for Sukinghan's loving lunch, but unfortunately he was in trouble now and couldn't leave. Sukinghan was not unhappy when he heard that GLUO couldn't come back. He just changed the subject to dinner. Okay, is there anything you want to eat? I'll make it for you in the evening. Alright. I love whatever you cook. GLUO thought about it carefully and found that he didn't seem to have heard Sukinghan's phone calls very often, especially this kind of call asking him to go home for dinner. It was definitely the first time in history. To be honest, he was definitely very happy, but GLUO was also confused. Why did Sukinghan suddenly treat him so well? Sukinghan, is there anything you need me to buy tonight? I'll take it back on the way. No, I'll go buy it later. I don't need anything. On the other end of the phone, Sukinghan's voice was a little low. She usually had a cold voice, but she could clearly hear some weakness. GLUO had been around Sukinghan these days. Listening to the silence on the phone, he had basically guessed what was going on. Okay, I'm looking forward to the dinner tonight. By the way, Sukinghan, you don't have to be polite to me. If you need any help, just say it directly. Don't keep it in your heart. GLUO, Sukinghan didn't expect GLUO to be so sensitive. He could hear that she had something on her mind. The woman's breathing suddenly became rapid. She didn't say the next word for a long time. She didn't speak again until her breathing stabilized again. I do need your help with something. Let's talk about it in detail tonight. Okay, see you tonight. Goodbye. Sukinghan's voice was softer than ever. It was as if she felt deeply guilty about GLUO, and she was trying to do something for GLUO in a very clumsy way. However, she didn't need to feel so guilty. After all, GLUO also felt deeply sorry for Sukinghan. Two people with awkward personalities. GLUO put his phone in his pocket and felt inexplicably warm about Sukinghan's attitude. According to common sense, GLUO's attitude towards Sukinghan was completely a dog-licking. Sukinghan didn't need to feel guilty or uneasy at all for what he wanted him to do. In fact, as long as she said what she needed, GLUO would definitely complete it without any reward. Just a compliment would be enough. However, the girl restrained her inner arrogance very much. She never took others' kindness to her for granted. She always kept her debts to others in her heart silently, waiting for the opportunity to repay. It was because of this kind of character that Sukinghan kept pushing away people who approached her and refused everyone's help. She didn't want to owe others favors, nor did she want to implicate others. It was a really easy to understand character. GLUO could even think that, as long as he made Sukinghan feel enough guilt and kept accumulating things, her attitude towards him would slowly change. The thing that made her so entangled should be the result of recent events. GLUO was actually a little worried before. How could he participate in the fight for the holy relics? But now it seems that Sukinghan actively needs his help. Isn't this perfect? As long as he participates in Sukinghan's plan, GLUO will be able to learn about the information of the world of evolvers from her, and thus stay by her side as an assistant. It's simply perfect. You know, if two people have a common secret, it is very conducive to getting closer. Moreover, GLUO is also considering whether to take this opportunity to gradually show some of his singularities. Not telling Sukinghan that he is an evolver, but letting Sukinghan think that he is about to awaken his original talent and become an evolver like her. Isn't it more logical? After solving Mengwu, these things should be considered carefully. Chapter 118, Deadline. Not long after GLUO received Sukinghan's call, the taxi stopped on the old street. Because more than a dozen vans blocked the road, it was impossible to go forward, so GLUO could only get off a little further away. Unlike the deserted morning, GLUO found that many people had gone out and stretched their necks to look at the hardware store, but everyone kept their distance and no one dared to approach. GLUO didn't expect this. He asked two people and found that everyone was still unclear about the matter, but ZHU Xiang had spread some news. Good job. When GLUO walked to the front of the hardware store, the previously deserted store was already bustling with people. ZHU Xiang didn't lie to GLUO. He found the restaurant very quickly. At this time, the tables and chairs of the restaurant had been set up, and more than a dozen waiters were laying tablecloths and setting up glass turntables. And further back, the chef of the restaurant had already started preparing cold dishes, and 7 or 8 waiters were cutting ingredients for hot dishes. Various meats had already filled several large basins. In the open space north of the hardware store, more than 50 thugs were sitting together in 2s and 3s. They all had machetes beside them, but they were all wrapped up with clothes. Kyo Junian and the other 4 were also among them, and their positions were quite forward. Kyo Junian and Yan Yunayang were sitting side by side at this time, and the two were chatting quite harmoniously. While GLUO was watching this, ZHU Xiang hurried over. He was busy like a child getting married. He had several cartons of good cigarettes in his arms, and gave one box to each person. He also nodded and bowed to everyone. His attitude was much better than that to GLUO. After being taught a lesson by GLUO, the attitudes of these thugs were much better. They didn't know the relationship between ZHU Xiang and GLUO, so no one was looking for trouble. They all sat there quietly, waiting for the meal to start. Because GLUO showed mercy, the thugs who were beaten were not seriously injured. They were now rubbing safflower oil on each other, and they were still grimacing in pain, but it did not affect their fighting ability. Humans are really very adaptable creatures. The hooligans who had just fought with GLUO now seemed to have no resistance to attending GLUO's banquet. Of course, Kyo Junian must have told them that the people they were going to fight were also hooligans. I don't know if it was Kyo Junian's credit. Yan Yunayang should have guessed that they were going to beat Mengwu's people, but his expression didn't change much. Interesting. GLUO didn't go directly over. He walked into an alley and sent a text message to Kyo Junian. Not long after, Kyo Junian hurried over. GLUO, you did a good job. GLUO was not stingy with his praise for Kyo Junian, but it was just praise. This level of effect was not worth GLUO's promise or award. No, it's all your credit, GLUO. If you didn't beat them, I wouldn't be able to convince them, and Kyo Junian knew his position very well. He didn't mean to be proud of himself. Instead, he was trembling with fear. When he spoke, he looked up at GLUO. The reason why Yan Yunayang is so easy to persuade is also because of their boss's approval. GLUO, as you guessed, their boss also wants to take this opportunity to intervene in the demolition of the old street. Money can move people's hearts. GLUO closed his eyes and listened to Kyo Junian's report without much expression on his face. Kyo Junian is indeed a good person. GLUO's ideas and plans are indeed good, but it is not easy for Kyo Junian to put them into practice. What's more, in that situation, Kyo Junian was forced by GLUO to complete the task. He dared to let Yan Yunayang make a phone call, which undoubtedly figured out the thoughts of these gangsters. Haha, a fight? Even if all these 50 people are killed, the boss of Yan Yunayang will not hesitate at all. The demolition of the entire old street, a commercial street very close to the city center. How much money will it cost? Everyone is eyeing this piece of meat, even if it is already on Meng Wu's plate, but no one minds grabbing it. That's good. With their boss's approval, these guys can do their best. GLUO was very satisfied with the way things were going, and it could even be said that it was unexpectedly smooth. But Kao Janian didn't think so. He didn't want to interrupt GLUO's good mood, but after hesitating for a while, he still spoke. GLUO, your bet is just an excuse. Meng Wu is likely to blame you for the problem. Kao Janian was not a fool. He had already understood GLUO's plan, so he was even more worried about revenge in the future. Not to mention Yan Yunayang, who beat up his people and asked his people to fight GLUO. Although this was to get involved in the interests of the demolition of the old street, revenge is still possible later. As for Meng Wu, that would be even more troublesome. He knew that the forced demolition of the spring cake shop was the root cause of GLUO's tantrums, and it was very likely that he would directly take ruthless action in order to crush GLUO to death. It's okay. Meng Wu will be too busy to find my business. As for Yan Yunayang, he thought he could get involved in the demolition of the old street without paying any price. How could this be possible? GLUO raised his head and looked at Kao Janian with a smile. Kao Janian was still thinking about GLUO's backup plan, but at this time, being looked at by GLUO, his body stiffened immediately, and he dared not think of anything. Kao Janian, you won't betray me, will you? GLUO said this in a low voice, as if to show that he didn't quite believe this possibility. How could it be possible? I promised you something, and I will never break my promise. I will definitely do it. Kao Janian's hair stood up when he heard GLUO's words. It's no wonder he was so scared. Even if GLUO said this in a low voice, as long as GLUO said it, it proved that GLUO was doubting this possibility. As for GLUO's attitude towards betrayers, Kao Janian didn't even need to think about it. He knew that he would definitely kill them. That's good. I'm afraid that Yan Yunayang, Meng Wu, and whatever benefits they give you, you will tell everything. Then it will be difficult for me. GLUO raised his hand and patted Kao Janian on the shoulder. Then he stopped talking, walked out of the alley, and walked towards the hardware store. In the alley, Kao Janian felt that he was sweating all over. Just at that moment, he saw the murderous intent that completely erupted from GLUO. That feeling was like seeing the god of death. Fortunately, I didn't do anything extra. Kao Janian even felt like he had survived a disaster. Of course, he didn't think about betraying GLUO, but he had thought about having more contact with Yan Yunayang. In the future, he didn't mind using GLUO's skin to do something. But now, Kao Janian has completely given up the idea. Because GLUO is really too terrifying. What is his identity, and how many people has he killed? It seems that I must eat more later. Chapter 119. The feast begins. After finishing his conversation with Kao Janian, GLUO swaggered into the hardware store. When ZHU Xiang saw GLUO, he immediately came over excitedly. If he had doubts about GLUO before, now his attitude was only flattering. Mr. GLUO, we are waiting for you. We can start the meal anytime. Then let's start. GLUO was not too surprised by ZHU Xiang's attitude, but he didn't like this kind of change in front of people. ZHU Xiang felt GLUO's alienation, took a step back, and his tone became restrained. Mr. GLUO, will you take a seat first? No, I won't go out to eat. Take a few dishes, and eat in the house. Although GLUO had contributed to the current situation, he didn't want to sit at the main table and take the limelight. This kind of thing can be left to Kao Janian. ZHU Xiang didn't expect GLUO to eat alone in the house. He was the protagonist today, so how could this make sense? But GLUO said so, and he had no right to comment. Mr. GLUO, the main table. Tell Kao Janian that the four of them and Yan Yunayang should sit there, and let Yan Yunayang arrange the other 5 people. After answering this question, GLUO seemed unwilling to take charge. He turned and walked into the inner room and sat on a chair to take a nap. ZHU Xiang looked at GLUO's expression of not wanting to talk about anything. He wanted to say something several times, but he didn't dare to say it after all. GLUO is now a hands-off boss. As a hardware store owner, he certainly can't do anything. There is no way ZHU Xiang can only find Kao Janian and hand over all the power to him. Okay, I know. Kao Janian did not refuse. He took the command from ZHU Xiang and began to modify the layout of the main banquet. Considering the possibility of fighting later, Kao Janian arranged the tables in a fan shape, with the most tables on the outermost layer, and also arranged the uninjured people here. At the same time, Kao Janian opened the distance between the tables, and even deliberately left a road, so that their innermost main table could rush to the outermost at any time. As for GLUO, Kao Janian naturally couldn't really pick only a few dishes for him. Knowing GLUO's true thoughts, he directly changed the layout of the hardware store, placing everything inside, and a large table at the main entrance, with the cold dishes placed on top first. Mr. Kao, is it appropriate to put the table directly facing the door? ZHU Xiang thought that GLUO stayed in the house because he was afraid that he would be affected by the fight, but Kao Janian knew very well that GLUO would definitely guard the central army to prevent Yan Yunang from causing trouble. It doesn't matter, start serving the dishes and let those people take their seats. Kao Janian rubbed his hands, and he was actually a little excited in his heart. Today's scene was actually not small, but GLUO gave him full authority. Whether GLUO was not convenient to show up, or wanted to test him, Kao Janian was not sure, but the feeling of commanding everyone was really good. Isn't this the opportunity I've always wanted? Kao Janian slowly clenched his fists, and suddenly felt a kind of blood boiling. He didn't know whether GLUO was a person worth following, but now, if he wanted to climb out of the bottom of the well, he had to accept his orders. And everything was arranged properly by Kao Janian just as he thought. More than 50 people, 6 round tables, all sat down, and there was a kind of momentum in an instant. The cold dishes were quickly placed on the table, and the drinks were opened one by one, but from beginning to end, no one dared to move their chopsticks. Because that person hadn't come yet. I'll go call GLUO. Kao Janian and Yan Yunang next to him apologized, turned around and walked into the hardware store. GLUO was lying on a chair in the inner room, looking a little tired. Are you ready? Ready. Kao Janian walked into the room, and before GLUO spoke, he stood there without making any sound. GLUO sat up from the chair, stretched his waist, and all the bones in his body made a crackling sound. Is everyone sitting at their seats? Yes, no one is picking up their chopsticks. Kao Janian himself was also paying attention to this, so he answered very smoothly. Although GLUO invited them to this banquet, GLUO was the winner. Inviting them to dinner was a tolerant and friendly attitude, but it also meant that, if they didn't accept the toast, they would be punished. Since Yan Yunang and the others were losers, they had to wait long enough. If GLUO, the one who beat them up, didn't show up, they would pick up their chopsticks without etiquette, which meant that they were dissatisfied and wanted to be beaten. That's not bad, just give them some face. GLUO stood up from his chair, patted Kao Janian on the shoulder, moved closer to him, and whispered a word. When someone comes later, you don't have to rush forward. If it's not necessary, you don't even have to fight. First, give the main hand to Yan Yunang, and see what he says. But in any case, we have to fight. Understood? Kao Janian followed GLUO throughout the whole day, so he naturally understood the key points, so he nodded very seriously. That's fine, Kao Janian, you don't have to be too nervous. If necessary, I will personally take action and sweep them all away. GLUO's words were actually meant for Kao Janian to hear. To put it bluntly, no matter what happens, he will guarantee his life. I will do everything I can to control the situation. Kao Janian heard what GLUO meant, and took a step back very respectfully. GLUO walked out of the house from his side, and Kao Janian also followed GLUO one step behind. Compared with the table of 10 people outside, GLUO's table was extremely luxurious, but GLUO did not make any comments, but sat down in the main seat very calmly. Because it was facing the door, none of the gangsters outside could not see GLUO, but from beginning to end, no one dared to look directly at GLUO. Even if they made eye contact with GLUO, they would quickly lower their heads. Kyo Janian sat back at the main table outside the door at this time. Although Zhu Xiang refused several times, he was still arranged to this table. Yan Yunliang could have brought 5 people over, but in the end, he only asked for 4 seats at the main table. Even though the last seat was empty, no one was allowed to sit at the main table. Today, we are all acquainted with each other. It is an honor to have a drink with you all. Let's toast. Luo stood up from his chair with a wine glass in hand. Following Luo's action, the 60 people outside all stood up in a hurry. Some of them had no wine in their glasses and they poured them in a hurry. Thank you all for your help. He clinked the wine glass on the glass turntable twice, then raised his hand and drank it all. The gangsters did not dare to neglect it and drank their glasses empty one after another. Only at Luo's invitation did they dare to fill them again. Everyone, please don't be polite. Enjoy your meal. Let's start. Chapter 120. Someone is coming. The wine table is really a magical place. The 2 parties who had fought before became lively after just a few drinks. Luo sat alone in the room, eating food and drinking drinks leisurely. Kyo Janian and Yan Yunliang came over to toast him, and Luo accepted. Later, Zhu Xiang wanted to toast him, but Luo waved his hand to refuse. After that, no one was blind and came to Luo to drink again. Luo put his mobile phone on the table and ate a whole table of dishes by himself. Not to mention that he had just eaten hot pot. Even if he really didn't eat, it would be impossible for him to finish the meal for 10 people. However, Luo's table was still the only one, and the amount of dishes did not decrease at all, but more. I have to admit that Zhu Xiang, although sometimes he doesn't know how to be sensible, but when he really needs to bleed to save his life, he will not hesitate. And now, Zhu Xiang is holding a wine glass and toasting the people at the main table one by one. Of course, no one really acted like a big shot, saying anything pretentious. Zhu Xiang's gratitude was expressed by everyone. You're welcome. It's all thanks to Mr. Luo's arrangement. Many times, the world is so realistic. If there was no Luo, Zhu Xiang wanted to get so many people to fight for him, and tens of thousands of yuan would not be enough to stop him. What's more, this was with a knife. If there was a real casualty, the medical expenses alone would make Zhu Xiang feel heartbroken. But now, Luo was just sitting alone in the inner room. The 60 people at the banquet were all honest. Not only did they not do anything out of line, they didn't even curse. Fortunately, after drinking some wine, the atmosphere became heated. Everyone found that Luo didn't have any emotional changes, so they knew that he would not target them, so the crowd became more relaxed. The banquet started around 1 PM, and there was definitely enough food, but there was a fixed amount of wine for each table. Some people drank a lot and wanted more, but they were dismissed by Yan Yunliang after 2 or 3 rounds, so no one said anything more. There were definitely no drunk people, but everyone was blushing and in high spirits. It was estimated that, if they didn't fight soon, they would go to the nightclub to have fun. But fortunately, Meng Wu kept his word and appeared on the old street very punctually. In the winter, when the daylight was a little short, at around 5 o'clock, the sun had already turned dim. It could almost be described as a rampage. A row of vans approached from a distance. It was not dark, but these people turned on the headlights of their cars and basically didn't look at the road all the way. They directly knocked the small shed on the side away. Squeak. The deliberate sound of emergency braking sounded very harsh. 8 vans stopped one by one, and more than 40 people got out of the cars with fierce faces. Walking in the front was a middle-aged man with a sturdy aura. Next to him stood a young boy who looked a little nervous. And these 2 people turned out to be Luo's acquaintances, Zhao Pingcheng, and, in a certain reincarnation, he was killed by Luo with an iron pipe. Being entrusted with an important task by Meng Wu in this situation, the middle-aged man was obviously a well-known figure under Meng Wu. Of course, he guessed that Zhu Xiang might find someone, but how could he be afraid? So all along the way, he was just showing off his aura. But when the middle-aged man really got out of the car, he looked at the situation in front of him and couldn't help frowning. What's going on? What does it mean? Zhu Xiang, the owner of the hardware store, knew that his house was going to be demolished, but he still held a banquet at the gate. Is this an old man hanging himself? Is he tired of living? Not to mention holding a banquet. Today even if he sets up a knife formation, this hardware store must be demolished. Who are you? Why are you interfering in the things on the old street? Because there were many people eating the banquet, the middle-aged man didn't notice the main table at first. He just thought that some ignorant gang came to interfere foolishly. However, before the gangsters on the periphery could answer, Yan Yunayang at the main table had stood up and walked all the way through the aisle left. ZHU Zhang watched Yan Yunayang walk over and couldn't help but wanted to stand up, but Kyo Janian beside him held his shoulders. Don't be greedy, sit here. Kyo Janian also winked at the three companions beside him, and the three immediately stopped standing up, sat back on the chairs, and held their weapons tightly. After Yan Yunayang left, the other three people at the main table also stood up and followed Yan Yunayang out. Yan Yunayang, as a figure among Meng Wu's men, he would naturally know people from other gangs, not to mention that Yan Yunayang and the leader of their gang were relatives. Wei-kun, I didn't expect to see you today. Yan Yunayang came here to fight today, so his tone was naturally not good. Wei-kun was able to sit in this position, so he was naturally not a fool. His eyes flickered, and his breathing became heavy. Yan Yunayang, this old street is not a place you can get involved in. This is our territory, and it has been divided and decided long ago. Hahaho said I want to get involved. We brothers are here for a feast today. What have we done? Yan Yunayang had already communicated with the boss. They came here today just to start a conflict. It doesn't matter what price they pay. What matters is that they have a reason to follow up. Meng Wu's current situation is not good. If they can grasp the scale, they may be able to have a little more cake. Yan Yunayang, today, we have decided to demolish the hardware store. You can't stop it. Wei-kun never expected that Yan Yunayang would appear here, and his tone was so tough. Considering Meng Wu's current state, Wei-kun's attitude became even tougher. They have reached the edge of the cliff and can't retreat. Oh, really? Today, our meal was treated by the owner of the hardware store. We are people who value loyalty, so we can't let you do whatever you want. Otherwise, where will our face be? Yan Yunayang spoke loudly, and the younger brothers around him immediately responded, as if ZHU Zhang was their good brother. Wei-kun stared at Yan Yunayang with his eyes wide open, as if he wanted to kill him with his eyes, but Yan Yunayang didn't care about this at all. No matter how he looked at him, he had already clenched the machete wrapped in his clothes in his hand. Wei-kun, you don't have to pretend. Today we are drinking and eating meat here. If the owner is demolished by you, how can we survive? Yan Yunayang's words almost killed the matter. Wei-kun stared at him for a long time, but he didn't detect any pretense on Yan Yunayang's face. At this point, Wei-kun completely understood that Yan Yunayang came here this time, just for them. Yan Yunayang, we have fought hard to get to where we are today, so don't let this road lead to your own death. Chapter 121, Fight to the Death. I'm going to block it. What can you do about it? Yan Yunayang felt that the time was almost right, and he tore his face off directly. As he shouted, more than 50 hooligans who were having the banquet stood up instantly, and the machetes in their hands were pulled out one by one. Wei-kun's face was terribly gloomy, and his eyes were fixed on Yan Yunayang, as if he wanted to eat him. He brought more than 40 people who could fight here today. Facing so many people from Yan Yunayang, the outcome might not be certain, but after this fight, today's forced demolition was ruined. But if he retreated today, the boss's forced demolition plan might collapse completely. So many people were watching him. If he ran away now, he would really lose all his dignity, and it would be difficult for him to gain a foothold in the future. Wei-kun looked at Yan Yunayang, who looked indifferent, took a deep breath, clenched the machete in his hand, and made up his mind. The kid named Zhao Pingcheng, come here. In the tense atmosphere, just as Wei-kun was about to shout out an order, a cold male voice suddenly came from the back of the crowd behind Yan Yunayang. Wei-kun raised his left hand, and Yan Yunayang was also sharpening his knife, but this voice, which was indifferent to the others, made the atmosphere that had accumulated to the extreme on both sides stagnate. The momentum was interrupted, and Wei-kun and Yan Yunayang both felt suppressed. Wei-kun was angry and was about to say something, but who knew that Yan Yunang opposite him had a calm expression and did not have the intention of provoking just now. Who is Zhao Pingcheng? Yan Yunang's eyes swept around and his voice was loud, but there was no emotion in it. Wei-kun naturally knew who Zhao Pingcheng was. He turned his head and looked at the younger brother beside him. The boy named Zhao Pingcheng also looked confused and raised his hand timidly. My name is Zhao Pingcheng. To be honest, Zhao Pingcheng himself didn't know why someone suddenly called out his name in such a tense situation. But unlike him, Yan Yunang on the opposite side looked at him and actually moved to the side to make way. At that moment, like an army that had received an order, the human wall of more than 50 hooligans instantly separated a path from the middle. A calm young man came over and made a gesture of invitation to Zhao Pingcheng. Let's go, my boss wants to see you. Zhao Pingcheng had never seen such a scene before. He was sweating all over and didn't know what to do. He turned his eyes to Wei-kun, but saw his boss nodded. Go, and see him. Wei-kun had prepared for a bloody battle, but he never expected that the current situation was different from the trap he guessed. Logically speaking, the leader on the opposite side should be Yan Yunang, but why could someone at the back make Yan Yunang so obediently make way with just one word? Wei-kun saw it clearly just now. At that moment, the expression on Yan Yunang's face was also inexplicable and confused. However, even with this emotion, he still responded immediately without hesitation, and the other 50 or so hooligans were as neat as an army. Who is the person behind Yan Yunang? Why is he so intimidating and powerful? Why does he want to see Zhao Pingcheng? With this doubt in his heart, Wei-kun stared at the front, and more than 10 meters away, a young man with a handsome and resolute face was holding a glass of water, raised his hand to salute him, and then drank half of the glass. Zhao Pingcheng, who was called over, was also walking tremblingly at this time. He was led into the house by Kyo Junian, walked to the young man, leaned over to hear his instructions, and turned to walk out the door. Boss, be careful, he wants Yan Yunang to kill you. Zhao Pingcheng stood not far from Gluo. He heard Gluo's order with his own ears. Worried that the boss would be caught off guard, he immediately shouted out Gluo's conspiracy. Fuck. Kill them. When Wei-kun heard Zhao Pingcheng's shout, he actually had a moment of doubt in his heart, but he immediately raised his knife. On the other side, Yan Yunang raised his knife reflexively just like him. Then, the swords of both sides wanted to fall one step ahead of the other. The two sides, who were ready to move, instantly turned into a ignited gunpowder barrel because of Zhao Pingcheng's shouting. Screams and roars broke out in the crowd at the same time, and then the two sides collided like white waves, and blood splashed out in an instant. Today, the reason why Wei-kun came here was because he knew better than anyone that their gang was now like a raging fire. Although it looked prosperous, if they took a step back, they would collapse. If he couldn't take that step forward, everything would collapse in an instant like a sandcastle in the wind. Therefore, Wei-kun could only fight desperately, and he had to fight desperately. Thinking of Meng Wu's order in his mind, Wei-kun's strength left no room for any leeway. A thug who thought he was a good fighter rushed over and was chopped on the collarbone by him, and half of his throat was cut open. The warm blood splashed on Wei-kun's face. He bared his teeth ferociously, pulled out the knife with force, kicked the seriously injured thug to the ground, and then rushed to Yan Yunang surrounded by people. Kill Yan Yunang. Kill Wei-kun for me. Yan Yunang's face was also red at this time. The scene of being beaten by one person and 50 people before was still vivid in front of him. In order to wash away this shame, Yan Yunang is now fighting desperately. It is precisely because he is related to the boss that he must work harder. If he wants to become the successor of the boss, he must be capable, valuable, and ruthless. With his ambitions in mind, Yan Yunang held the long knife in his hands with both hands. Years of martial arts training gave Yan Yunang amazing arm strength. He chopped down with the thick-backed long knife in his hand and actually directly cut off the machete of the opponent. Then the blade cut the side ribs of the opponent and cut open the abdomen all the way down. Blood was dripping and blood was rushing to the sky. Both sides had the most capable and ruthless subordinates. Now that the opponent had killed them, how could they hold back? From the first moment the battle broke out, the nature of the confrontation between the two sides changed. It was no longer a simple fight between gangsters, but a bloody fight for interests and the future. No one showed mercy and no one dared to hold back, so the fight turned into a fight, and blood and blades danced wildly on the plain where the two sides collided, like a wild literary giant, dipping a pen in blood and painting wildly on white silk. On the long street, fear and madness spread. Looking at the bloody fight between the two gangs, everyone was scared pale, and the whole street was almost cleared in an instant. Everyone kept their doors and windows tightly closed, even the curtains and rolling shutters were pulled down, for fear that one glimpse would give them a nightmare, except for the people at the banquet. Chapter 122, Teaching. In the frenzy of blades and blood, screams, and roars intertwined one after another. The opposing sides gathered into two human walls, using their lives as fuel, burning the most dazzling and fierce fire. Behind the human wall, the 6 fan-shaped banquet tables were almost empty, and only the main table was still occupied by 4 people. ZHU Ziyang was shaking, like chaff at this time. Beside him, Kyojanian's 3 fellow villagers were holding their weapons, their bodies stretched straight. If they could, they wanted to escape immediately, the farther the better. However, like ZHU Ziyang, the 3 of them had already been involved in the current scene. There was no choice to retreat or dodge, and they could only watch and wait here. Because, behind them, someone was watching all this. Arsehole. Zhao Pingcheng's head was pressed on the banquet table, and he desperately tried to struggle to get up, but Kyo Junian was like a mountain, making him unable to move, and could only intensify the shaking of the table. A minute or two ago, Zhao Pingcheng shouted to Wei Kun, but just when he wanted to run away, Kyo Junian stopped him, and easily beat him to his knees, pressing his head on the table. Kyo Junian stepped on Zhao Pingcheng's kneeling legs with one foot, making it impossible for him to raise his knees. He pressed his head with one hand, and grabbed his wrists with the other hand, pressing hard on his back. Zhao Pingcheng looked like a rooster waiting to be slaughtered. There was no possibility of resistance at all. He stared at the young man at the other end of the table with anger, looking like a tiger cub that had been aroused. Don't struggle, it's meaningless. Jialuo seemed to be annoyed by Zhao Pingcheng's attitude. He put down his chopsticks and slowly took out a blade from the small box next to him. This kind of blade is available in every hardware store. It is a paper cutter blade that costs 2 yuan a box. It is light and thin. Arsehole, I'm going to kill you. Zhao Pingcheng watched Jialuo take out the blade and thought he was going to do something, so he struggled harder. But before he could raise his head, Jialuo flicked his fingers, and a black shadow attacked instantly. Woo. After a crisp sound, Zhao Pingcheng only felt a sudden pain in his throat. The blade thrown by Jialuo sharply cut the skin of his throat, and then pierced into the table. Zhao Pingcheng could even feel that the blade was constantly trembling after it was fixed. In a millimeter, his neck was only cut open by a layer of skin, which was not very painful, and the blood did not flow much. However, Zhao Pingcheng immediately shut his mouth and dared not speak again, because Jialuo told him with his actions that his life was in his hands. That's right, be quiet, what's wrong with that? Jialuo closed the small box containing the blade, raised his eyelids, looked at the scene of fighting outside, and sneered indifferently, as if the two sides who were fighting only deserved his expression. Zhao Pingcheng, calm down now. Jialuo waved his hand, and Kyo Junian immediately let go of Zhao Pingcheng, took a step back, and stood at the door, as if waiting for orders. Calm down, then sit down, and drink some hot water. After Zhao Pingcheng regained his freedom, he looked at Jialuo in doubt, touched his throat with only a blood mark, and sat down with the help of a stool. Outside, the fierce battle between the two gangs had reached a crazy point, with people falling down, and people swinging machetes. Zhao Pingcheng turned his head and just took a sneak peek, then turned his head away, and never dared to peek again. Even Zhao Pingcheng was secretly glad in his heart that, if he hadn't sat here, he might have been chopped to the ground and now only had one breath left. How about it? Do you have any ideas about the group of people outside who were beaten to a dog's brain? Jialuo took the kettle, poured a glass of water into the cup, and then put it on the glass turntable, and turned it in front of Zhao Pingcheng. Xiaoping Cheng looked at Jialuo uneasily and took the water with both hands. Old Street should be the territory of our gang. Wrong. Jialuo interrupted Xiaoping Cheng directly, frightening him so much that Xiaoping Cheng trembled and water spilled on his hands, but Xiaoping Cheng didn't dare to wipe it off and could only sit like a quail. Jialuo didn't care about Xiaoping Cheng's performance, but he was still indifferent. This old street only belongs to the people who live here. Everything Meng Wu did was plunder. Or, he is changing the concept, turning the living environment exchanged for blood and sweat into a mineral that only the strong can own. Because it is a mineral, and because it can only be owned by the strong, this battle broke out. None of them is a good person. They are just competing to see who is worse and who is more cruel. Jialuo seemed to be teaching Xiaoping Cheng. His tone was a little harsh, but not cold. Xiaoping Cheng didn't dare to refute, nor could he refute Jialuo, so he could only nod. That's true, but the demolition of the old street is not something that can be done by one person, nor can it be decided by one person. Boss, it's just suitable. Suitable? I think you are also suitable to die here. Do you want to die? Jialuo looked at Xiaoping Cheng with contempt. Xiaoping Cheng's eyes met Jialuo's for a moment, and he was frightened, and immediately lowered his head, not daring to quibble anymore. I don't want to die. If you don't want to die, get out of here. Don't delay yourself anymore. Go to school and go to work. Jialuo knocked on the table coldly, then raised his hand, pointed outside the door, and motioned Xiaoping Cheng to look outside. Turn your head now, and take a good look at what dogs they are. See if any of them are innocent. See how they died in the end. Xiaoping Cheng didn't dare to resist Jialuo, so he could only turn around and look outside. After just a few minutes of fighting, more than 20 people fell to the ground, and blood splattered all over the ground, and a nearby soup was red. Xiaoping Cheng, do you know your own weight? Go home. This is not the world you should stay in. Jialuo seemed unwilling to talk to Xiaoping Cheng anymore. He waved his hand, indicating that he could go away. Now, go back to your boss Meng Wu, and tell him that I'm here to find him. The matter of Spring Cake Shop is not over. This is just the beginning. Okay. How dare Xiaoping Cheng resist Jialuo again? When he heard Jialuo let him leave, he immediately bowed gratefully. Then Xiaoping Cheng stood up from the chair and timidly looked at Cao Junian next to him. After finding that Cao Junian had no intention of taking action again, Xiaoping Cheng immediately walked out of the door and began to run desperately away. At this time, the fight between Wei Kun and Yan Yunayang had reached the point of exchanging lives. There were nearly 100 people on both sides, and everyone was injured. Half of them fell to the ground, either seriously injured or dying. If Xiaoping Cheng entered the scene at this time, it would actually be just right. If he was desperate enough, he could even make Yan Yunayang stupid. But he didn't. He ran away. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, It Doesn't Matter. Xiaoping Cheng's departure can be said to be arranged by Jialuo. In the previous reincarnation, the boy's final awakening still left a good impression on Jialuo. So this time, Jialuo gave him a reason to leave. Time is almost up. Jialuo played with the glass in his hand, raised his head, and drank the last trace of water, and then stood up. Cao Junian, let's go. Okay. Cao Junian seemed particularly obedient at this time. He walked out of the door first and waved to the 3 fellow villagers, motioning them to follow. On the other side, Zhu Xiang, seeing Jialuo walked out of the door, immediately stood up and wanted to say something, but was stopped by Jialuo's eyes. Zhu Xiang, just sit here and rest assured. This matter will not affect you. Although Jialuo didn't like the hardware store owner's mercenary, he would not affect him for no reason. Wei Kun and Yan Yunayang fought too hard in this battle, and they would lick their wounds next, and would not endanger ordinary people. I understand. Facing Jialuo's decision to die, Zhu Xiang no longer said meaningless words to waste his emotions. He still had Jialuo's phone number in his hand. If his life was really in danger, he would not hold it unused. GLUO had no intention of wasting time anymore. The old street was terribly quiet at this time. He walked forward alone, and Kyo-Janian and the other 4 followed closely behind him. Is it really not affected? ZHU Xiang looked at the figures of GLUO and others leaving, and he was worried, as if his backing had collapsed. Unfortunately, he could not change anything after all, and could only wait for the outcome to come. In ZHU Xiang's view, GLUO's departure was somewhat inexplicably abrupt, but as a middle-aged man with a long history of the world, he also understood that, although GLUO led all this, he wanted to clear himself at the final settlement time. Who is this GLUO? ZHU Xiang's question could not be answered after all. He could only sit back in the chair and wait for his own end like a criminal waiting for judgment. At this moment, the fight between Yan Yunayang and Wei Kun was coming to an end. Of the nearly 100 thugs who had attacked fiercely, only 20 or 30 could stand up, and all of them were injured. Yan Yunayang and Wei Kun were surrounded by their subordinates, covered in wounds, and looked like they could no longer fight. Both sides were injured, and only a few could stand. Someone had already called the emergency number, and they were now fiercely asking the hospital to send more people. The leader was dying, and the remaining subordinates no longer had the mood to continue fighting. They separated clearly, with a tacit understanding that did not require words. Because he was unconscious, Wei Kun had been carried into the car by his subordinates, and was ready to be sent to the hospital immediately. Yan Yunayang seemed to be in a better condition. He had prepared medical equipment in advance. Or Thug pulled out the first aid kit from under the table, lifted the tablecloth, threw the dishes on the table to the ground, and then lifted Yan Yunayang onto the table, and began to stop the bleeding urgently. After the bloody and brutal battle, the long street was so quiet that it was a little scary. ZHU Xiang stood up from his chair tremblingly, hesitated for a moment, and went to help Yan Yunayang's people. Just when the battle on the old street turned into a rescue, GLUO had already led Kyo-Janian to sit in a tea house. The tea house was diagonally opposite the entrance of the old street. Because it did not involve demolition, it was still operating steadily. GLUO found a position with a good view and leisurely ordered a pot of kung fu tea. The tea aroma curled up. GLUO held the boiling hot tea, but he was not in a hurry to drink it. Instead, he used his fingertips to rotate the edge of the hot cup, so naturally that he seemed not to feel the burning. Through the huge floor-to-ceiling windows, GLUO's vision was far beyond that of ordinary people, and he could vaguely see the rotation in front of the hardware store. In fact, even if you can't see that far, just looking at the ambulance driving into the old street, you can know how tragic this bloody battle between the two gangs was. As a witness to all this, Kyo-Janian sat in front of GLUO. His aura shrank like a quail. Kyo-Janian was like this, not to mention his 3 fellow villagers, who lowered their heads and no longer had the courage to make eye contact with GLUO. In fact, it was not that Kyo-Janian and the others were timid, but that GLUO was too scary. Everything was within his calculations. Exactly. Under his instigation, the two gangs fought, and blood flowed like a river, but when it came down to it, it seemed that it had nothing to do with him. After all, GLUO was a righteous man. From beginning to end, he stood on the side of the weak, whether he was followed by gangsters, besieged by gangsters, or even helped to resist forced demolition. He was in a position of legitimate defense. It's just that the result was too outrageous. Mengwu, you will be very angry this time. GLUO tasted the tea calmly, as if the bloody scene before had nothing to do with him. Today's events, whether it was Mengwu's side or Yan Yunayang's side, were not what GLUO was afraid of. The only thing that can make GLUO feel scared is the greatest justice in this world, the police. And now, because of the fight over the demolition, the two gangster groups dare not and cannot call the police. In this case, what else would GLUO be afraid of? The worst result is nothing more than dying once and going back in time. GLUO has the final backup. He is not afraid at all. So GLUO did a very outrageous plan for the whole plan. But this also means that once GLUO's plan succeeds, then these two entangled troubles will completely disappear. Kyo-Janian, what do you think the boss of Yan Yunayang feels now? It should be very complicated. Kyo Junian didn't expect GLUO to ask him this. After repeated consideration, Kyo Junian gave an ambiguous reason. Of course, GLUO doesn't like to play dumb. What's the complicated situation? He should be very angry that so many of his subordinates were injured, but he should be very excited to be able to do something about the demolition of the old street. He should be very hesitant about your existence. Kyo Junian's attitude towards GLUO is very complicated now. He is afraid of GLUO's force and scheming, but he also wants GLUO to recognize him and include him in his system. Therefore, Kyo Junian thought about every word for a long time. He unconsciously fell into his old habit and wanted to analyze GLUO's psychology, but obviously he couldn't get an answer. GLUO, compared to Mengwu, we didn't cause much harm to them, and there is a chance to become allies. But considering the subordinate's thoughts, he should just choose to ignore it and observe our attitude first. Good analysis. GLUO also had some understanding of Yan Yunayang's boss, but compared to Mengwu, that person is much more low-key, just more scheming, and extremely greedy, and will not let go of any benefits. After what happened today, that person will definitely stare at Mengwu. Chapter 124, the final test. It should be yes. Kyo Junian went through the current situation in his head and nodded in agreement with GLUO's judgment. Now it seems that Mengwu's most ruthless first knife has been blocked by Yan Yunayang. Compared with Yan Yunayang, who knows some of the situation, Mengwu knows nothing. In order to keep his position and guarantee his own interests, Mengwu must negotiate with Yan Yunayang's boss, and this game for interests will obviously consume all the other parties' mind. Kyo Junian, what can we do in this situation? GLUO had a meaningful smile on his face. He spoke in a questioning tone, but he obviously had no doubts in his heart. The real reason for GLUO to say this could only be to test Kyo Junian. Kyo Junian originally thought that GLUO's plan had come to an end. He had provoked a bloody battle between the two major gangs. The plan had been successful, and stopping should be the best way. However, GLUO actually wanted to continue to make trouble at such a critical juncture, and it was a major news. Kyo Junian did not expect this decision, which could be called a suicidal decision. GLUO, do you want to become a third party? Third party? What do you mean? GLUO did not react at all to Kyo Junian's answer. He did not show that Kyo Junian guessed it right, nor did he show that Kyo Junian guessed it right. In short, it was extremely difficult to figure out. Kyo Junian's head hurt from thinking about it. He felt that GLUO was exploiting him. The reason why Kyo Junian knew that GLUO wanted to become a third party was nothing more than seeing that he and Mengwu were enemies, and then he used Yan Yunayang. How could he join one of them when he had no intention of making friends with both parties? A third party means that the fisherman benefits from the quarrel between the snipe and the clam. Are we the fishermen? GLUO put the empty teacup on the table and suddenly interrupted Kyo Junian. Kyo Junian licked his lips and shook his head helplessly. We are not the fishermen. Even if they fight each other to the point of bleeding their brains, we can't take advantage of them. No. Even if they fight each other to the point of bleeding their brains, we can still take advantage of them. GLUO picked up the teapot and poured tea for Kyo Junian and the other three people. The four of them were flattered and held the teacups, and Kyo Junian leaned down slightly. What advantage can we take? We can watch them fight to death. GLUO showed a bright smile on his face, or it could be said that he finally revealed his true thoughts to Kyo Junian. Kyo Junian had never expected that GLUO's plan would be this. His hand holding the teacup trembled, and his knuckles were scalded by the hot water. It turned out that GLUO's targeting of the two gangs was not for the interests imagined by anyone else, but simply for revenge. Kyo Junian endured the shock in his heart. His eyes fell on the rippled teacup, and he didn't dare to look at GLUO. What hatred and resentment. Did GLUO do all this because Mengwu forcibly demolished his lover's cake shop? In the fight just now, at least a dozen or 20 people from Mengwu's side will die. The pensions for these people are a huge amount of money, not to mention that the survivors are covered with injuries. The medical expenses alone are a huge expense. This is too cruel. It's just a cake shop. Is it worth doing this? What GLUO did can be called killing without bloodshed. Of course, GLUO saw blood, but he didn't touch it. He just found a point of entry and stabbed it hard, and then the behemoth began to bleed. Moreover, there were two gangs, and at least 40 people died in total. It was shocking. To be honest, would a normal person indirectly kill 40 or 50 people because of the demolition of a house? Kyo-Junian was really a little scared. He deliberately turned his back to the scene of the gang fight just now and didn't dare to watch the scene of so many people bleeding. However, Gluo was facing the door. He had been watching the bloody battle between the two parties. However, in Gluo's eyes, the life and death of so many people seemed as ordinary and quiet as falling snowflakes. At this moment, Gluo was playing with the still warm teacup in his hand. He had no intention of interrupting Kyo-Junian's contemplation, but was just waiting for him to get the result. Gluo, if they fight, we can indeed live a lot safer. Kyo-Junian quickly made up his mind. He raised his head and looked at Gluo with his eyes. The meaning of surrender in his words was self-evident. Obviously, Kyo-Junian answered in the affirmative and gave Gluo the last tentative answer. Kyo-Junian had been following Gluo today. He knew everything Gluo had done. Now Gluo revealed the truth and said that he would do it more ruthlessly. This kind of thing itself was not acceptable to ordinary people. However, Kyo-Junian accepted it. Not only did he accept it, but he also prepared himself mentally in a very short time and even changed his answer to Gluo to we. That's good. Gluo was very satisfied with Kyo-Junian's attitude. He waved his hand to the side, signaling the waiter to come over to settle the bill. After paying for the tea, Gluo led Kyo-Junian and the other two out of the tea house. At this time, a row of ambulances drove out from the other end of the old street across the road. After running a red light, they disappeared on the other side at high speed. The speed is quite fast. Gluo seemed to no longer care about the life and death of Wei-kun and Yan Yunayang. He walked leisurely on the street, as if he was just relaxing. However, Kyo-Junian, who was following behind Gluo, was more worried than ever before. Because the fatal crisis was approaching step by step, Yan Yunayang and Wei-kun suffered such a heavy loss because of a bloody fight that the ambulance took away people. The bosses of both sides must have known the situation. Although the two parties who were mixed in the society at the same time would fight for their own interests, they would definitely come together as long as there were enough interests. Kyo-Junian could even imagine that it wouldn't be long before the bosses of Mengwu and Yan Yunayang would meet, and the two would engage in a series of interest games, either completely tearing each other apart and becoming enemies, fighting till blood flowed. Or, they would find a balance point of interests, and both sides would stop. Neither of these two groups of people is a good person. It would be fine if they really fought each other, but the fear is that they would give up their hostility after exchanging interests. At that time, as the initiator of everything, Gluo would definitely be known by Mengwu. By then, the angry Mengwu would probably really kill Gluo at all costs. And Kyo-Junian estimated that the bosses of the two gangs might have already talked on the phone now. Of course, the really important things would not be discussed on the phone. They would definitely make an appointment for a place, meet each other and set up their positions. In this case, the result will be out tonight. Chapter 125, The Grove. Yeah, the result will be out tonight. Gluo suddenly turned around and gave Kyo-Junian a meaningful look. Kyo-Junian never expected that Gluo would hear his whispering. He scratched his cheek and didn't know what to answer for a moment. However, Gluo didn't care about Kyo-Junian's reaction. He just crossed the road alone, then turned around and glanced at Kyo-Junian and the other three. Kyo-Junian, you can just follow me from now on. The three of them, go back and rest. Okay. Kyo-Junian didn't ask Gluo why. He just walked to Gluo and tucked his collar as if he was afraid of the cold wind. Then, Kyo-Junian's three companions came over. Kyo-Junian said a few words to them and asked the three to go back to the dormitory first. In the cold wind, Kyo-Junian stood at the intersection, looking at the three companions going away, his eyes gloomy. Kyo-Junian, what's wrong? Are you still worried about the safety of the three of them? Gluo was in a very relaxed mood. He carefully observed Kyo-Junian's expression, a little curious. Why did he look like he was about to die? Kyo-Janian did not answer Gluo immediately. He exhaled a breath of hot air, looked at the sun that had begun to sink, and his face was indescribably heavy. No, I just have a feeling that after today, they and I can't go back to the past. Will it? Gluo heard Kyo-Janian's metaphor. What he meant by can't go back to the past was not the collapse of the relationship between the three of them. It was that, after he and Gluo had a deeper contact, he would be on guard against and conceal the three of them. Yes. Kyo-Janian looked at Gluo without hesitation. His meaning was also very clear. No matter what happened today, he would conceal it from others, including the three people with the best relationship. After all, the result will be out tonight. Who knows? Gluo admired Kyo-Janian's carefulness. He was keenly grasped by a certain idea he slightly revealed. Kyo-Janian, let's go. Yes. Kyo-Janian nodded and followed Gluo's pace. He didn't ask Gluo where he was going. Since he had made the choice to follow Gluo, he would not look back and forth. He would just follow him. In the gradually sinking sunset, Gluo and Kyo-Janian did not walk fast. They crossed several of the busiest streets, got on the bus at a street corner with few people, and then sat for about half an hour before getting off the bus in a street block with few people. Until this time, Gluo still didn't explain anything to Kyo-Janian. The days were short in winter, and it was already dark, but Gluo walked in front without any sign of slowing down. Is this a construction site? Kyo-Janian followed Gluo for most of the day before he realized that Gluo had turned around and walked into a very small construction site without knowing when. Shh, be careful. Gluo put his finger in front of his lips, signaling Kyo-Janian not to make a sound. Kyo-Janian did as he was told, but before he had walked far, Kyo-Janian looked at Gluo's cautious look and suddenly reacted. Gluo, is he planning to steal something? Kyo-Janian hated thieves and robbers the most in his life. Even when he was so poor that he could only eat steamed buns, he never thought of stealing. However, at this time, Gluo walked in front. Kyo-Janian stood there and hesitated for a while, but still gritted his teeth and followed. Maybe Gluo was planning to steal something important and valuable. However, Kyo-Janian was soon slapped in the face. He didn't even have the chance to excuse Gluo. He saw Gluo flip into a room and stretched out a steel bar in a short while. Kyo-Janian took the steel bar from Gluo, and his mind was full of confusion. The steel bar that Gluo stole was not long, about 1.7 meters long, with a diameter of about 25 millimeters. It was very heavy to lift, and there was no way to bend it. Let's go. Gluo was like a little mouse who stole a cake, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Kyo-Janian held the stolen goods in his hand and wanted to ask Gluo, but in the end he said nothing and just followed Gluo out of the construction site. Kyo-Janian, I can do all these things by myself. Do you know why I brought you along? Gluo took the stolen steel bar from Kyo-Janian, looked through it with satisfaction, and even squinted one eye to see if it was straight. Kyo-Janian followed Gluo with his head down, trying to connect Gluo's words and actions in his mind, but ultimately failed. I can't think of it. It's not that you can't think of it, you just never thought about it that way. Gluo pointed to the side, signaling Kyo-Janian to turn and walk into the woods. Today, the reason I brought you along was because I needed you to make up for my problem. And now, I brought you along to give you a reason. What reason? Kyo-Janian thought he had some understanding of Gluo, but the answer Gluo gave now was really far from what he had guessed. The reason for choosing to follow me. Gluo did not shy away from the idea that he wanted to win over Kyo-Janian. He led Kyo-Janian to the edge of the woods and stopped before stepping onto the road. Kyo-Janian licked his lips and faced Gluo's smiling eyes and suddenly felt a little nervous. Although Kyo-Janian knew that if Gluo attacked him, he would not be able to resist, but at this time, in this uninhabited forest, Kyo-Janian still felt fear in his heart. Gluo, the reason for me to follow you is enough. Really? Then this time, let's change it to a reward for you. Gluo sat down on the ground, leaned his body against the tree trunk, and took out his mobile phone. Guess who I'm contacting? Guess the big prize. An acquaintance of yours? Kyo-Janian also sat on the ground like Gluo. Gluo looked up at Kyo-Janian, and his face was pale under the light of the mobile phone. Ha 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 ha, Kyo-Janian, you with thick eyebrows and big eyes, can you also joke? I'm just telling the truth. Kyo-Janian felt Gluo's closeness, and naturally took the opportunity to bring the two sides closer. Gluo and Kyo-Janian looked at each other, and they both laughed at the same time. Kyo-Janian, I'm sorry, you guessed wrong. It's not an acquaintance, but an enemy. Enemy? Kyo-Janian had come to his senses at this time. The person Gluo was contacting must be related to what he was doing now. First he stole steel bars, and now he ran to the woods beside the road. What was Gluo trying to do? An ambush. Wait, an ambush? Kyo-Janian's body trembled suddenly, as if he had received an electric shock. He looked at Gluo in horror, and at this time, Gluo also looked at him, and nodded with satisfaction. Yes, an ambush. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.